and I'd love to know how that compares to what other counties have been paying for consultants. And then I was curious to know the process for who's on the committee and how we recruit them and how many public meetings there are, and just sort of that general kind of stuff. That's what I'm looking for. I don't know, maybe other people have other ideas.
Makes sense. Okay, any other comments about that item?
What you want to hear about?
Well, who is,
Lou's
yeah,
here.
Lou's here.
Well, today's not the update. Today's,
Right, no, it's
Yeah,
just what
Right.
things you might want to hear about.
yeah. Well, it's too much money. It's poor timing. We haven't established a committee. I
Right,
mean,
but the idea is,
Monday.
do you want this to come back?
Do you want to
for
have an
another-
update on these things?
Yeah, yeah,
I
because
do.
there's a meeting scheduled for Monday at 10 o'clock, is it, Lou? To go over the submitted RFPs, yeah.
so is that a motion, Chris? Or do we need a motion? I
This
guess.
is committee of the board.
Right.
We need
Just
two
did, yeah.
to move forward to the
No,
next.
three.
No, we
need
already
three.
did that. We
Three.
did two.
We had two. So we need at least three to put it on an actual event.
Don't you remember, Dwayne? These are the new rules you put in place.
I don't
To
think
me,
that-
it would make more sense.
I don't really think Dwayne is responsible for this.
I think we
I'm gonna
did
blame
that
it on him.
prior to him.
Chris,
Yeah.
Marcia, and who?
I agree. We
Yeah.
should.
Yes.
I think it would be good.
Yeah,
We're not deciding anything.
before we spend a
No,
dime.
but
You're
just
just moving
figuring
it
out what
forward.
we need to do.
Okay.
What staff is planning to do is.
And Lou, you have most of that done already. You presented to the EDA, so President of Parks and Rec, so we're about Parks and Rec, Parks and
Mhm.
Environment Committee. So we're not asking staff to go start from scratch. All right,
All right. We'll bring it back to a future meeting.
is that it, Chris?
That is it.
Anything else for committee?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, then we'll close the committee of the board and we'll wait until 5:45 for the health board.
That matters.
We have extra batteries.
We have.
That one's always, yeah.
Idea, I need a.
Page 11.
I'll move to approve the minutes from November 12th.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Vagley, second by Commissioner Olson to approve the meeting minutes from November 12th. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, approved. Chairperson's report. Nothing on the, well, there was big news on the state level. The State Commissioner of Health, and I apologize, she sent out a letter. They're reorganizing themselves again for many, many times. And I'm not, the letter was very high level, talk, and I'm not sure what the
I
goal or
didn't
what the
understand it. I'm with you. I
Yeah.
did not understand it.
what
really.
what their goal
Okay,
is.
What does that really mean?
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know, Emily, did you, was it as clear?
Great insight to share.
Yeah, okay. So what they're reorganizing, they're moving bodies around and stuff like that.
Cunningham,
Exactly.
that's her name.
Yeah, Brooke
Cunningham?
Cunningham. So we'll wait and see what that has. There is a shack meeting in early December. And maybe we'll get some more insight as to what that does or improves for us. A big part of it is they keep moving people around in functions and everything, and it just seems like it creates more paperwork and documentation, and I'm not sure what their goal is. We'll find out. Other than that, I think, actually, how's the county and Winona Health? I mean, we haven't had any big outbreaks of flu or influenza or anything. Schools, Dwayne,
Pretty good.
schools are
Okay.
good, pretty good and stuff, okay? And the biggest word would be wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands and stuff. Funny little thing though, situation comedy, there was a situation comedy show and they had a new infant. And so everybody was being very cautious of how to handle this infant, which you should be cautious. Well, the grandma was using, every time she thought about touching the baby, she used hand sanitizer. And she would get the baby and the baby would just scream. Of course, situation comedy. Baby would just scream. And they came to the conclusion, she finally figured out towards the end of the half hour, the baby didn't like the smell of the hand sanitizer. So she threw it in the garbage. So I don't know. Some people really like hand sanitizer. I prefer soap and water. All right, item 4, consent business. We have 4.1, approve the local public health grant agreement. It was page 69. Somebody want to just give us some highlights? of that, please?
Hello, Emily Volkman from Public Health. So the local public health agreement that you're looking at is essentially just a re-up of continued funding for both local public health responsibilities and foundational public health responsibilities with that 5-year period to support the basic functions of public health.
That's the dollar in the jar, ain't it?
Yeah. Is the funding slightly increased?
Slightly,
Yeah,
Yeah.
nothing radical.
nothing radical, no.
Okay, right.
I'll move to approve item 4.1, the local public health grant agreement.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Vagley, second by Commissioner Meyer to approve the local public health grant agreement 2025 to 2029. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, approved. General business, 5.1, receive presentation and approve accepting cannabis and substance use program to provide education on substance use prevention.
That starts on page 16, right?
Yes.
16?
Yep.
Looks like this.
Yep.
Yes, isn't it beautiful?
Love it. Very nice.
Should have been green.
Oh, shoot, we'll work on it.
Okay.
So really today, here to just kind of introduce this funding stream that is new and get some guidance as far as if we would like to proceed to the next step with accepting these funds and then developing a plan around them. So the funding stream is called the Cannabis and Substance Use Prevention Program. Just for clarity, it is not a grant, it is a funding stream. So there is some variation in how that is allocated. We've been awarded $109,000, just over $109,000 for 2025 related to this funding stream with anticipated funding for 2026 as well. And they'd use the same formula to calculate that. So depending on how our population grows or changes during that period of time, it will likely be pretty similar. So these funds can be used essentially to pay for staff or contracts, in-state travel, supplies or equipment, and an indirect cost of less than 10%, and as well as other eligible uses, which you can see on page 4.
Emily, can I pause you for a second?
Yes, of course.
Do we have Heidi for the audience?
Oh.
Maybe call up the slide deck. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
No, you're just fine.
It is in our packet, so if
Yep.
somebody
Mhm.
was, they
Yep.
could access
For
it through
folks who are
our
watching.
agenda.
Yeah,
Yes.
it might take Heidi a moment to bring it up.
No problem.
In the interim,
Yes.
Bring that point up, exactly.
this is so
It's the
oxymoron,
oxymoron.
contradictive. Cannabis prevention program, and we just passed a law making it legal.
So
What was that?
the funds are acknowledging that the fact that there will likely be some social cost to the legalization of cannabis. And this is designed to be proactive prevention and education dollars to combat particularly youth use of cannabis and make sure that folks that are using don't get into the situation where they're misusing.
It's like smoking 2 packs of cigarettes to only 1 a day.
Exactly.
And I'm cutting back.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
Riding the line between, use and misuse or addiction. Yes.
And I don't think the public Minnesota Department of Health was heavily involved or asked to give their opinion on their actions of legalizing.
The Office of Cannabis Management has kind of taken responsibility for all of these issues, including this grant funding. And there's also other grant funds available to other parties related to cannabis as well. This is just one that's been awarded directly to the county.
I get it.
So when we look at, so I'm going to have you go to 2 slides from now. There we go. So we kind of walked through the general expenditure categories, and the eligible uses for the funds can include, must include cannabis and substance focused interventions. So to just call attention to the fact that it is not just for cannabis, although it should have a guiding focus on cannabis. The primary focus should be on primary prevention, which is essentially preventing people from using and misusing initially, whereas the secondary focus is more on misuse response and education and recovery programming. But the distinction is that it can't be used for actual individual service. It's about creating the foundation and the structure around programs and services and linkages to support people that need to navigate through these systems. There is a requirement that we use evidence-based, evidence-informed, or promising practices through our actions. And that it does give some ability for us to use the funds kind of to establish office space through purchase of technology or equipment and furniture and those types of things, if we decide to go that route. Next slide tells us our ineligible uses, which again is focused on direct services to individuals and any associated expenses to the individual, and things like childcare for people participating in services or other capital improvements. The next slide tells us some general duties that go along with the acceptance of these funds, which is designating two roles within the county, which is the grant project coordinator and the grant program evaluator. We must complete and update a work plan, and we must use the theory of change and or logic model approaches, which are approaches in the substance use community. We have to participate in baseline measurement for all of our activities and participate in basically anything the state tells us to do related to site visits, trainings and education, and evaluation activities, along with completing reports on our work plan and our budget.
Have
So
they come
those,
up with any materials? I mean, have they got a cannabis workbook or something?
they have lots of materials,
Yeah.
yes.
That they are evidence, what was your thing there?
Evidence-based.
Evidence-based.
Well, and so there's lots of material about evidence-based programming, but they specifically want us to use this theory of change and logic model approaches, and there is education and materials out there to kind of support that work. I can't speak to it specifically. I will not claim to be an expert in those areas. There has been kind of a delay in the receipt of applicable information related to anything kind of cannabis related. These grant duties and things of that nature came out at the beginning, a week before we were supposed to start spending these dollars theoretically. So the grant term started November 1st of this year, and we received this information essentially a week prior to that.
So some of the higher education institutions around the state created business model curriculums and such. Has anybody, tech schools or colleges or anything, created these cannabis experts to do the education?
No.
Okay, there's
So
nobody that's quote trained to be a cannabis educator?
No.
Okay.
Got about 5 minutes left.
Yep.
All right, so our next page just looks at fiscal considerations, which just notes the fact that there is no county match associated with this funding, and that second year funding is anticipated, but beyond that, there isn't anything in legislation thus far. So that's kind of the end of the general information about the funding stream. Just kind of looking for guidance from the board as far as interested in moving forward and seeing proposals about how we might structure the use of these funds if you're interested in moving to the next step.
I am.
Absolutely.
Well, you can't hire too many people for $109,000, and it's got to be a contract because it's, I don't know that our legislature is going to be funding it ongoing. It's hard to say.
I think though, I missed the opioid steering committee meeting, but I think the idea is to take some funds from there, some funds from here, and some funds from tobacco, and have a person who can manage the
Everything.
opioid work.
That'd be a great contract position, because when that's all dried up,
Yeah.
then what do we have?
Ross, you look like you have some words. and
Yes,
wisdom.
just in regard to, so the contractor agreement just establishes the terms of reimbursement. So are you wanting us to go ahead and process that for signatures? Or are you wanting to hold on until we come back with more ideas?
I don't understand the question.
I don't even-
So we brought the information forward, but I guess the question, see, it's not a grant, it's a funding stream, but we still have to sign paperwork if we're going to proceed.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm asking for clarity, if you could clarify that as part of your
Just that to get
motion.
the 100,000.
Money? Yeah.
Yeah.
Get the money?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. But we don't have to do anything to get it, just simply sign the paperwork. We're not adding staff, we're not doing anything. It's
It just establishes the terms of reimbursement, so we would then have the paperwork routed
Right.
for signatures.
A next step would be determining how we're going to
Correct.
fulfill the.
Oh, great.
Okay.
I guess I
All right.
would say move forward with
Yeah.
the paperwork.
Moving
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
Okay. And then,
So we need a motion. Do we-
So moved.
I'll second.
How could we state the motion, Rob?
To review
just,
and approve accepting cannabis substance use program. Funding,
State money.
state funding.
State funding.
Yeah.
State funding.
Okay, Colton moves. I second.
Okay, Olson moved. Meyer seconded.
Yep.
Any other further discussion? Okay, so more to come if we get, and when we get the funds. All right.
The only discussion I have is as we look at consolidating these dollars and realize that it is not a continuance of money, it's a finite number that we do everything we can to look at contract-based situations to, if we need to administrate or anything out versus adding staff.
according to the original legislation, it was supposed to be funded through fiscal year 27, but
And
we're
already
getting mixed messages.
And to add additional staff or add people to help administer it, I heavily suggest contract work.
And then, just quickly, as far as signatures, Karen, do you want, for approval as to form and execution, do you want that to sign first before it goes to the chair, or?
I would
'Cause
just
you
want to
were-
look at it, but I can do an approval as to form and a combination.
It just has to be routed through the state's DocuSign system, so I just need to tell them which direction, who to send it to first. And
Send it, well, you can send it to me first, I guess, and then I can, whatever they put there, I can approve it as to form if it, usually state documents we can't do much with.
I'll do that's the same for the local public health grant update as well.
Okay, so we have a motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay. Okay, approved. All right, you'll work out the details. Any other business to come before the health board at this time?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Elton, second by Commissioner Meyer to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed nay. Adjourn.
Sorry,
That's okay.
are we good?
Good.
Yeah.
And with that, we'll call to order the regular meeting. Please rise for the saying of the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
The first order of every county board meeting is public comment. If anyone is present or anyone who is online who would like to address the county board cannot respond, but we are very anxious to hear people's thoughts. If you care to share your opinions, please come to the mic, state your name and address. If you are online and want to join us, let us know, and everybody has 2 minutes to speak. Is there anybody present that would like to address the county board during the public comment section? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Ann Joria, 344 Knott Valley Drive. I was happy to see that the discussion of dog breeding kennels was included on the agenda tonight. I urge the county board to pursue a permanent amendment to the Winona County zoning ordinance to ban future dog breeding kennels, the first of 2 motions that was approved by the board back in February. Sufficient evidence has been presented over the years to the county board and the planning commission to support a permanent ban. The second part of the motion, also approved back in February, is to look at improving standards and conditions within the existing kennels. This issue, separate from the ban, would greatly benefit from a period of study that fully discusses ideas and options, placing the protection of dogs as the top priority. Thank you for keeping this issue alive. The residents of Winona who care about animal welfare, thank you, and the dogs and the puppies, truly, thank you. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else in the audience or online that would like to address the county board? I'll ask two more times. Is there anyone online or present that would like to address the county board? I'll ask one last time. Is there anybody present or online that would like to address the county board? With that, we'll close the public comment section. The next item on the agenda is to approve county board minutes from November 12th, two different meetings, the closed session and the regular board meeting.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Elsing. Any other discussion? All's in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is 7.1 and 7.2 to acknowledge receipt of approved committee minutes from Land Records and Health and Human Services Advisory Committees.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Elsing, seconded by Commissioner Olson. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, consent comments and approval of the agenda. Commissioner Elsing.
9.5 and 9.8 to pull just for a little discussion and several comments at the end, please.
So we'll take 9.5 and 9.8 and move those to. Does it make sense to change the order in terms of Ms. Holt's staff present to get people in and out a little bit sooner?
I would say yes.
I don't think they're going to be long discussions.
Okay.
Just a few questions.
Well, just because the other ones, like the soil and water, might be a little while. Should we like make 9.8 first? Is that okay?
Yeah, either way.
Is that okay? Make
Yeah,
it
they're
10.
just a couple things I just want to bring up.
It's staff's here, just want to get them in and out if possible. And some comments at the end. Commissioner Ward?
Again, they would be short discussions, but I would like to pull 9.1 for a question that I failed to ask earlier, and 9.3, a question on that. Whatever order you want to put them in is
Okay.
fine.
Just for the sake of when we approve the modified agenda, what is the order?
So let's make 9.8 10.05. Does that make sense?
Okay, so it comes before 10.1.
Yeah, 10.05. And then I guess we can take, unless there's someone else has a recommendation, we'll make 9.1 10.6. 9.3 is 10.7. And 9.8 is 10.8.
No, 9.8, you made
9.9.
9.8 is 10.05.
9, 9.5.
9.
0.05, meaning it's in
Right,
front of one.
that's my fault. 9.8 is 10.05, so
So 9.5 is 10.8.
10.8, thank you.
There's a quiz when
Is
this
that
is
right?
done.
Yep,
I wrote it down.
Who's on first?
It's an open book.
that's my fault. I flipped it. Thank you. And Commissioner Ward, was that it?
Yeah, well, then a possible comment at the end.
Okay,
Thank you.
Commissioner Olson,
Nothing for me.
Commissioner Meyer,
No, no.
Ms. Holting, Solomon,
She's got to figure it out.
okay. So just to review, item 9.8 becomes 10.05. Item 9.1 becomes 10.6. Item 9.3 becomes 10.7, right?
Correct,
And 9.5 becomes 10.8.
yes.
I'll move to approve the agenda as it was modified.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Olson. Any other discussion? All's in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
May get clunky because you're talking, unfortunately, we probably should have had them before the budget discussion because some of them have budget implications, but that's,
So Ms. Holte, can you read the remaining consent items into the agenda?
Yes, sir.
We'll get through.
9.1 was pulled. 9.2 approved 2025 county board schedule. 9.3 was pulled. 9.4 approved professional services agreement with Hannah Shadlowski for provision of monitoring services for pretrial services program. 9.5 was pulled. 9.6 approved resolution to sponsor Region 1 Emergency Management Joint Powers Board membership with Minnesota County Intergovernmental Trust. 9.7 approved 2025 to 2029 local public health grant. 9.8 was pulled. 9.9, approve USI Consulting Group Hildy Agreement for Post-Employment Benefit Valuation Report under GASB Statement 45. And 9.10, confirm payment of disbursements.
Move to approve the consent agenda as it was read.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Olson. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. That brings us down to what had previously been 9.8, which is now 10.05. Approve opioid settlement committee strategic plan. For those who are following, that's page 83.
Correct.
Commissioner Ward, you want to start? Oh, is that?
That was-
I apologize, Commissioner Elson.
No, I just wanted to pull it, and actually, I kind of made my point when Ross came up here before with the money that's coming into.
Yep.
First of all, I thought the plan looked nice,
Mhm.
you know, read through it, very structured, organized, looks great. But I just wanted to reiterate that I know we've got these dollars come in, it's very common to try to find somebody to, hey, we need more help or whatever that is. And we know that, again, I'm just gonna say it again, so it's on record, this is a finite group of money that we're gonna get. And so when that's dry, we don't want to end up with more staff members saying, okay, now what do we do with the staff? So I'm just gonna encourage that if the last place we want to put any of these dollars is more administration, we want it to be as close to boots on the ground for the cause in which it was intended for. And if we do need to add anything, then we look at a contract scenario, so that way when the money is gone, we don't have a continuance of expense to the taxpayer. So I just wanted that on record to be able to say that. So
Thank you.
I move to approve item 10.05.
I'll second it.
Motion by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Elsin to approve what had been item 9.8, which is now 10.05. Any other discussion? I'm sorry, Commissioner Ward.
Yeah, having sat in on, I think, most of the meetings and such, the concept behind this is to be flexible, that it may need to change as funding and everything changes. And I've expressed this at several of the meetings. I am somewhat concerned, having gone through the tobacco settlement money, is that money was very specific to tobacco. It seems like, and maybe it hasn't, but it seems like this opioid settlement money is a little more gray as to exactly what it can be spent on. And it seems like we're, in my opinion, we're maybe stretching the boundaries, hiring these quote navigators and things like that. And I asked the question the other day, if we're spending money helping these people who have an addiction problem, do we have to document that they had an opioid problem? And I'm kind of being told, I guess what I heard is that not really. It's kind of a substance abuse catch-all. I mean, I don't disagree. The opioid manufacturers did a terrible thing and they benefited and now they're giving some of that back. But I remember, and the tobacco money, we had narrower parameters. Maybe we were given narrower parameters, as I remember, what that could and couldn't be used for. And this seems to be a little looser. So I want to be careful how we spend it. And as Commissioner Elsin said, not to overload with employees that would have long impacts on a budget. And this whole season agreement, we're not in the market to hire a number of staff to do these things. So I think that's very important.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is 10.1, receive presentation from Soil and Water Conservation District. We have, meant to hear it. So that's on page 141, 142. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you for inviting us. I'm Amanda Gentry with the Winona Soil and Water. I'm a resource conservationist who's been there just over 13 years now.
I'm Jim McKay. I'm a conservation tech, just over a year.
So we were asked to present a similar presentation as what we provided to the policy committee for the Winona Crescent Watershed Policy Committee. And we decided, since you represent the county, we're going to present on both the River Watershed and Winlac watersheds, which encompass Winona County. So we can go to the next slide. We want to kind of outline which areas of plans encompassed within the county. 69% of Winona County is covered through the Winlac One Watershed One Plan, while 31% is covered by the River One Watershed One Plan. We have a lot of partners that we're working with to come together and make decisions about how these plans are going to be facilitated and set goals and figure out ways that we're going to achieve those goals. Some of the challenges that creates is that we're managing two plans. We're working with two different policies that have different rules for how we're spending funds across the county. We have a lot of meetings that we're going to. And then when it comes to reporting, there's a lot of reporting going on as well, having to determine which watershed you're in before you can even start working with the landowner and things like that. Often there's different programs, cost share payment allowance, depending on where they're located. Makes it a little bit more difficult to work with
And weren't we
landowners on the ground.
promised initially this was going to make things easier? I
Yes.
remember hearing that, yeah.
In
It
some
does for a
ways it has
county that-
streamlined, but
Yeah, it is for a county like Fillmore, which is all in one,
mhm.
and Houston, almost everything in Houston is one, but when you've got multiples, yes, it's not.
There are
any
some
easier.
counties with 7 plans.
Yes.
So
yeah.
we're lucky with 2, but it does complicate things. We can go to the next slide. We're going to try to go through quick. I think we're asked to do this in 10 minutes. And so we'll try to go a little bit quick here.
Yeah, so these are our grade stabilization structures, commonly known as ponds that are dotted out throughout the landscape. Grade stabilization structures are put in place to stop gully heads. It's also to catch sediment, phosphorus, nitrates, stuff that's coming off the fields. So the point of it is to make sure that the soil stays within the landowners' fields rather than run off into our streams and throughout our watersheds. So with that, we've had 3 structures built within Root River watershed and 5 structures built within the Winlac.
This is over the last 2 years.
Right, and as you can see, there are totals that we've spent with Root River funding as well as Winlac, and then our partners with NRCS or federal.
In most cases, we've been able to provide 90% cost share to landowners. As the cost of construction rises, the cost of constructing these goes up. So trying to help landowners be able to establish these in their fields is a huge task. So, all right, we can go to the next slide.
So this is just one example of what a grade stabilization structure goes through the kind of the timeline. The picture on the left shows the gully head. The contractor had already been in there clearing out some trees, and then the picture in the middle is kind of nearing towards completion, and then the picture on the right is that same structure there after completion. So that one is holding water. They don't all hold water, but they all do serve a purpose, and making sure that a lot of that sediment and chemicals stay, within that pond.
Next slide.
Just another example here, the gully head's on the left. Tough to see, the red line kind of outlines where that gully head is. A lot of these structures are built to accommodate either a 10-year storm or a 25-year storm, depending on the size of the watershed. So acreages that are shedding water down into these areas. So a lot of our structures within Winona County require anywhere between 900 to 1,500 to 2,000 yards of fill, and a lot of that'll catch water and accommodate for those storms.
All right, next slide. Another project that we've done in the last year or so is we've assisted a landowner with sealing or closing a waste facility. It was a manure storage under old hog barns that were outdated and no longer used. The alternative was just to leave it sit there, and eventually it would fail. There was manure still in these, and they hadn't been used in over a decade. So the first step is, at the landowner's expense, they remove the building, they remove the manure, and then the feedlot officer comes out to inspect the structure. If the structure is sound and has not leaked, then they punch holes in the floor to allow for drainage in the future when it rains. And then they knock in the walls, fill it with clay and pack it. And then they put some black dirt over top and seed it down. Luckily, in this case, the floor and walls of the pit were in good shape. There was no leaking from the pit, which meant we did not have to tear out the concrete floor and reclaim the soiled or the spoiled soil underneath. That would have driven the costs up quite a bit. So we got lucky on this one. We had cost share between the Root River watershed and our federal partners. Next slide. Cover crops were huge this year. It was nearly 3 times as many cover crop acres this year as past years. People were knocking down our door to get in. We kind of ran out of money before everyone was funded, unfortunately, at least the folks that came in a little bit later in the season. This year we had over 2,500 acres enrolled in cover crops. And this year's pollution reduction, well, it's actually 2023 and 2024 cover crops combined over the last 2 years have helped reduce nitrogen from reaching our groundwater by 111,000 pounds. So that's huge. That's a lot of nitrogen that we're stopping from having leach into the ground. The numbers that we have up here for cost share programs are a little bit skewed for 2024. This was what was planned. Of course, things never go quite as planned, and we moved some funds around into different funding pools to try to use up some of our older funds that were going to be expiring soon.
But maybe just a little, the farmer was paid so much an acre for cover
Yes,
crops?
so because we have 2 watersheds and we have 2 policies, we had 2 different rates in Winona County. In the Winlac watershed, we had $50 an acre for single species and $60 an acre for multi-species. In Root River, we had $40 an acre for single and $50 for multi. Well, that makes it really hard to work with landowners, especially if they have land in both watersheds, and it makes contracting very difficult. So we chose to take some of our SWCD funds in blue and match an extra $10 in the Root River area, so everyone got the same amount. Makes things much easier to plan and work with people on the ground. It does still make reporting in the background difficult, because then you have to report to both grants instead of just one. So it makes some things easier, but also makes some things more difficult.
And then the farmer, they're only paid 2 years, can they get 2 years payment or?
Yeah, so in Winona County, we set a policy where you're allowed 2 years. The first year is usually a single species. The second year, you have to show an improvement to the system that you're using. Usually it's a multi-species mix that you're doing, or maybe you're planting sooner, maybe you're allowing it to grow taller, it's some sort of benefit so that we're getting more in return.
Well, and the hope is that they do see benefit.
Yeah,
and
and
not
continue
too
on
much
their own.
cost,
Yeah.
and that they will continue.
Yes, that's the hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
No,
the hope.
but I think,
I
you know,
think people are seeing benefits.
20 years ago, I used to talk cover crops and nobody would listen to me.
No,
I said, it's one of the best things you can do. I mean, all the farms, they transitioned organic. It was an essential part in creating nitrogen out of the air. Nobody wanted to listen. You were laughed at. And so when we really heavily started talking about this years ago and the funding sources, and you can see how there's the interest has gone straight up as there's an adaptation to what I don't even consider this alternative farming anymore. This is just widespread practice. But you think about all the times I got laughed at, oh, that's, you're just throwing money away. And the reality of it is alluding to your point, was the idea of public funded using taxpayers' money was to educate, show the landowner, the farmer, whatever it is, that this is a beneficial practice, and then pull them off the taxpayers' payroll. And that is the most crucial part to this cover crop for the continuance that the Soil and Water is trying to do, is to say, look at the benefits, look at the soil health, look at the nitrogen you've saved, look at all the things that come into play. So just as crucial as the dollars there, so is the educational piece behind it. And that'll create the continuance. And you know what? I think a lot of people do continue to do it. Maybe not on the scale in which they were public sector funded, but they understand. And one of the big things that I see is I tell people, hey, they get so caught up in, I got to do my whole farm. I say, do 20% of it. At least in 5 years, the whole farm has been done.
We had landowners fill out an interest form this year so that we could get a lot of the information up front. And one of the questions at the end was, do you plan to continue cover crops in the future? And almost all of them said yes,
It was
because
like
they work.
90% or something.
And then there's 1 or 2 that said only if I get cost share. So the majority of them want to continue, and a lot of them are doing more than the acreage that we're allowing. We only pay for up to 100 acres. So
I just didn't bring a big enough hammer.
An insight, but an interesting story yesterday at the One Watershed, One Plan. And weather plays a big part in cover.
It does.
If we don't get the rains, we didn't get rains when we needed them. Was it this summer? He said.
It
And he
was,
went
yeah,
out-
late summer.
Yeah, he went out and he applied manure and it just went gangbusters.
Yeah, moisture.
Without that manure, it probably, the enough moisture in the liquid manure, probably wouldn't have worked. So, I mean, it is so critical. There's many things that they can't control
Yes. Yeah.
to the success.
Great numbers.
But yeah, good
Yeah.
numbers.
Next slide. We've also got a handful of projects going on, mostly down in Pleasant Valley, that are actually wrapping up right now. We're looking to get those paid on in December here. They are invasive species management and pollinator habitat projects. Most of them have the dual purpose. Some of them have one or the other. The acres still both add up to be 14.3 acres between the 6 projects. We've also pulled in Fish and Wildlife Service funding on this one, which is awesome. And the majority of these plantings are along the stream corridor down there, which is going to help further improve Pleasant Valley Creek, which has recently, one of the impairments for macroinvertebrates was recently removed for that stream, which is awesome. So we're hoping for continued movement there.
No beaver control?
I haven't heard many people talk about beavers down Pleasant Valley, but I know that there's other areas that do.
The other.
Yeah. All right, next slide. We did have one tree planting that we were able to cost share. We haven't been able to cost share tree plantings very often in quite a long time. One of our funding sources from the state opened up so we can use them for habitat plantings now. So able to help a landowner put 775 trees down on 3.5 acres. So next slide. We've been able to help seal 5 wells in the Winlac watershed over the last 2 years, providing between 50 and 75% cost share, depending on the funding source usually. We also worked with Sheila Harms with Winona County here when they were sealing the Altura well with a grant that Winona County had received. And they were able to send a camera down the well. And we used footage that we got from that to develop a video that helps encourage people to seal unused wells in southeast Minnesota. There's a huge need for that. So next slide.
Is that on YouTube or anything?
It's on our website and YouTube, our YouTube page.
Oh, okay.
So, yep, I think it's like 8 minutes or something like that.
Okay.
So, we put on a couple of field days this year. The first one being in June. It was our field day meeting for the Basin Alliance of Lower Mississippi and Minnesota, shortened to say BALM. It's a regional meeting for Southeast Minnesota, SWC state folks to get together and share information. We were down at Trout Runs Creek down in Saratoga Township for that near Troy. Over 50 people attended and the day was well received, and I think a lot of information was shared between folks there. Next slide. This is a map of the area of the stream stretch where we were visiting during our tour down there, our field day. And the outline, the red outline, shows the area that drains to the area outlined in yellow, which is the stream corridor that has a trout fishing easement on it. And then I've also highlighted all of the different conservation practices on the landscape that help provide nutrient reductions for nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment from reaching the stream. So, next slide. Our second field day this year was at one of our supervisors' places. Ross Graydon hosted a soil health field day for us. We had over 100 people attend. We had a great presentation at this one on different forms of tillage and what they do to the ground and how much disturbance they produce. It was really good to see side by side the different kinds of tillage equipment and why reduced tillage is more and more sought after.
It was great timing too, because we just had a heavy rain.
Yes. Yeah, and it actually blew down the tent that we had up for lunch. So we got lucky where they were able to come back out right away in the morning and set up another one for us.
Yep. But it was real clear to see the difference when they had the different plow side by side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next slide. And so with this one, we could just kind of have a map of the different areas that we visited while we're on the tour of the different sites on the farm with the field demonstration with the tillage equipment. They have a prairie with a living snow fence out there, and he talked about the benefits of that and why, you farm the best and kind of buffer the areas that aren't as productive or aren't as easy to farm. Next slide. And that's it. We thank you all for your support and your partnering with us so that we can help all the land owners out there on the landscape.
Thank you so much. Any questions or comments for Amanda?
They came and did the same presentation to the One Watershed, One Plan yesterday too. So.
Thank you. And there's a
Thank
whole
you
bunch of positive stories in terms of, ag practices and what government, local, especially to use Commissioner Elsing's to steal his, educate versus regulate. This is proactive, positive.
And this is only a small snippet of what Soil and Water does.
Thank you for what you guys do.
Yep.
And welcome, Jim.
Yeah,
All right.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Next item is 10.2, discuss/approve funding portion of MAT program at Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center with opioid settlement funds. Emily, is that a you thing or is that we should?
If you want it to be a meeting, it can be.
You're on the hot seat.
I guess so.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Sheila.
So the opioid committee did make a recommendation to approve some funding for Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center's medication assisted treatment program focused on opioid addiction care, which is kind of wraparound support, includes psychiatry and counseling services, which is unique in our community. And they submitted the funds that they're requesting are really their startup costs for 2024 and their non-reimbursed time in 2025, anticipating that as they grow this program, that there will be less reimbursement they'll be receiving, but ultimately that they would be able to be self-funded going forward after this kind of startup period.
But really, this is just a fraction of what the total
Yes.
cost of the program is,
Yep.
which is in the hundreds of thousands. So.
Any other questions?
I'm sorry, but actually the amount for this is, because we've got that budget there, so they're requesting 22,196 but that's 2024.
Mhm.
And then for 2025, we're looking at the 7,224
Okay.
for 2 year period. Okay, all right, I wanted to make sure.
I will move to approve this item.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Olson to approve funding for the MAT program at Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center. Any other discussion? Commissioner Ward?
Well, in all these things, we kind of have tried to create some type of measurements. What are, we're spending this money, what are we getting for it? And that's yet, it will be, determined. It's not easily determined and it's probably not as much as, we don't know how to anticipate how this is all going to work.
We do have metrics that will be drawn into our professional services contract with Hiawatha Valley to support these funds. They've been identified related to their outcomes, related to their care, as well as their growth in participation within the program as well.
It's more than just a mark on the check.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, in fact, I asked Emily to kind of help me with this.
Yeah, there's
Because-
a lot in there.
Yeah, there is.
There are lots and lots of metrics, yes.
Turn that page and.
Well, and number one, you have to print it bigger. So, yeah.
There's a lot of unknowns and Ms. Holte's been trying to hold the reins tight. And I think Ms. Holte has a comment.
Sorry, Ms. Holting.
Commissioners, we have been working very diligently to make sure that we can measure the outcomes with the opioid committee. Anything that we are bringing forward, we are making sure we have measurements. That was drilled into me from the very get-go, and we have been carrying that forward on everything we are bringing forward. So I can assure you, we will have measurements to share with you.
Just one comment that I have with that is, it's, you look at everything short-term and long-term and, it's a finite amount of money. How can we see the continuance when the money stops? That's the big thing. Does that make sense? Because you can treat so many things, but now the money stops and then the services go this way. That's the challenge of this to me.
But the key is, and exactly why we are not intending to pay for positions in various entities. This is about creating sustainability in the community.
Mhm.
We help them get up and going and be self-sufficient. That is going to help it be ongoing in the future. We're not the go-to, Winona County is going to pay for this indefinitely. We are here, we're going to help you, we're going to help you be sustainable and measure your outcomes.
And to add a second layer of accountability and measurement, I'm on the board of the Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center. They also are very interested. They have a limited pool of funds, so they want to know what works and what doesn't work as well. So, yeah, so there's a second set of eyes and metrics being used as well too. So, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is 10.3, discuss large-scale dog breeding operations. That's on page 162. How do we start this off? We need a bigger podium. Ms. Holte, bigger podium.
Just to keep us.
Thank you.
Usually people put their foot in their mouth, but obviously Mr. Krantz put his hand somewhere he wasn't supposed to.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my hand is fine. I was just hoping to get a little sympathy.
You know how your garage door accordions? Uh-huh. It's not good to get your fingers in there.
Yeah, I don't really recommend that. I'll go on the record with that.
Welcome, thank you.
Thank you.
Don't give a lawyer a garage door opener.
Oh, I'm not gonna.
I thought since this is coming back to the board, it would be good to just go back and review the process that got us to this point and where we're at and what could or could not happen next. So this started back in March of 2023 when the Planning Commission received a presentation from staff on dog kennels. The Planning Commission then, in April of 2023, held a public hearing and recommended that the board make no changes to the zoning ordinance related to dog kennels. May 9th of 2023, the county board accepted the Planning Commission recommendation and then passed a motion to begin the process of implementing a zoning ordinance amendment that could potentially prohibit new large-scale dog breeding facilities. The Planning Commission notes from May 18th indicate that the county board received the Planning Commission findings of fact, but opted to review options to potentially prohibit dog kennels on a 3-1 vote by the county board once the planning director is hired and the District 3 commissioner is in place. Then on October 24th, 2023, the committee of the board requests staff to bring back options to address the well-being of animals, specifically noting dog breeding facilities at the second meeting in January 2024. And that, I was hired after that, and so this is where I entered, and I was at the February 13th, 2024 meeting and gave a presentation on what those options were. And the board passed a motion to have Winona County work towards establishing the following: prohibit further permits for kennels as defined in section 4.2 of the Winona County zoning ordinance, and to research the possibility of business licensing as an alternative method of regulation. And then there was a big gap because as I think the board knows, our office was fairly understaffed. We had less than half the attorneys that we need to operate. And so that basically sat on my desk for several months. But on August 27th, 2024, the county board adopted findings of facts in support of an interim ordinance and referred that to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission on October 17th held a public hearing, considered the interim zoning ordinance, and tabled it. The Planning Commission then again on November 21st considered the ordinance and tabled it again. So where that leaves us in terms of where we're at in the process, we have an interim ordinance that has been proposed. It has been referred to the Planning Commission. The interim ordinance is just to put a moratorium on additional dog kennels in the county while the issue of commercial dog breeders are discussed and studied. That went to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission under Winona County's zoning ordinance has 60 days from the date of the public hearing to make a recommendation to the county board. And then once the county board receives that recommendation, there's 60 days in which the county board must act. And it would be receiving the recommendation and adopting findings of facts and voting on an ordinance up or down or whatever the board decides it wants to do. So, So right now we have kind of a little bit of a procedural issue because the Planning Commission has until December 16th to make its recommendation to the board, but the Planning Commission does not meet again until December 19th. So
Clarification on that point. Is it 60 business days or 60 calendar days? It doesn't state in the ordinance.
yeah, normally in interpreting statutes, there's a court rule used to compute days. And so defaulting back to that court rule, since it's an ordinance, which is similar to a statute, it would be calendar days, not including the first day that triggers the start of the term. And then calendar days, including holidays, Saturdays, Sundays, and then the last day, the 60th day, if it's a Saturday, Sunday, or a holiday, it would go on to the next day that is not a Saturday, Sunday, or a holiday.
That seems kind of contradictory because you're not counting Saturdays and Sundays when you're counting that way, but you said 60 days, you're counting all the days.
No, we're counting both of them are counting all the days.
But
It just means if the 60 days lands on one of those three, it moves forward. It's not.
Because it's not a business day,
what statute or where you get, is that a Minnesota court ruling or is that a United States ruling? It varies.
So it's a general rule of procedure for the district courts in Minnesota. It is not set in stone to apply to ordinances.
Because also in our ordinance, I brought this to your attention, and I think I've got the right one. I took the ordinance off the website, but it says an amendment to the official controls may be initiated by the county board, the planning commission, or by application by the owner. Any amendment not initiated by the planning commission shall be referred to the planning commission for review and may not be acted upon by the board until it has received the planning commission's recommendations. So where does your 60, what overrules, this or the 60 days?
That is
They're in conflict.
That is the rule. That is the old rule that was amended in January of 2018.
Okay, well, why is it still in the most current publication I pulled up off the county website then?
So if you
Why
look
hasn't
at,
it been updated on that? Is there a special page I'm not looking at?
so if you see on that page, there's a zoning ordinance and there's a list of amendments
Yes.
about this long.
Yes.
None of those are integrated into the main document.
What amendment changed that? I couldn't see which
Oh.
of that list changed
Yeah.
from this verbiage to the 60 days.
It was the amendment adopted on January 23rd, 2018.
January 23rd, 2018.
If you go on the website there, Commissioner Ward, you'll see that under Winona County zoning ordinance and amendments.
I hate to lose my.
I know you deal with a lot of paper. I had given you a copy of this at the planning commission meeting.
I know, but my question then, why hasn't it been incorporated into the zoning ordinance?
That I don't have an answer for.
Okay, all right. Okay. Pardon me?
I could speak to that when.
Oh, that's okay. If that's what you're saying is, I'll have to look it up again because I'm going about this. I'm going about the actual zoning ordinance it's on. And it does, you could put a little subnote in there saying it's been amended or something. It isn't rocket science to change it. Okay, go ahead, continue, please. Thank you.
Sure. So So we have this situation where the planning commission has not acted. They tabled the motion, making the recommendation. Their opportunity to do that will expire 3 days before the next meeting. The ordinance gives the county board the authority to extend the timeline, but does not give anyone else the authority to extend the timeline. So the planning commission cannot extend its own timeline.
What's the penalty if the planning commission does not take action in that 60 days? What happens then?
So
Because we could call a special meeting.
Mhm.
Okay.
So this is basically not addressed in the ordinance. So basically, I would go to sort of rules of statutory interpretation. There's two things about this ordinance. One is that the planning commission is designated as only making a non-binding recommendation. And then two, the ordinance gives the planning commission 60 days and then the county board 60 days to act. So the ordinance does not envision any circumstance under which this process could go longer than 120 days. And so the planning commission has no ability to stop the process. So it would proceed forward however the county board decided to do it without the planning commission's recommendation.
And that's a matter of interpretation, and that's not law or statute or anything. That's our interpretation of rules that we made.
That's me doing a legal interpretation of the ordinance.
Okay. All right.
So your options then would be to extend the timeline, and if you want to do that, the ordinance calls for good cause and written findings of fact. Or you could choose not to extend the deadline and move ahead with the interim ordinance process without the planning commission recommendation. And if that were the path, you would adopt findings of fact in the interim ordinance on January 7th. At your next meeting would be the earliest you could do it. Or you could determine that the interim ordinance has failed and do nothing, or start the amendment process again without an interim ordinance element to it that would provide the further study. So the planning commission then would receive that at the next meeting after the board would do that, which would be the board stating its intention to amend the ordinance, but not have an interim period of study. And as Commissioner Ward is correct, it's not black and white. So if there's any of these paths can be challenged legally, if someone would at least get their day in court if they challenged it. I think I'm pretty confident that the board has the authority to move ahead based on the language of the statute or the ordinance and how I see courts interpreting them. So you'd probably just get up to a summary judgment motion or something on that because there would be no facts in dispute. So.
Commissioner Ward.
So that brings us to facts and dispute. So the facts, part of the facts that were written is, I did ask the question, because the Planning Commission feels that the conditional use permit process is working. And this emergency that you're using, it has not been identified as an emergency. Even using, Webster's, unforeseen happenings, state of affairs requiring prompt action. There have not been any specific things, and even the staff said, when staff conducted inspections at the beginning of 2023, there were no issues of non-compliance identified. Now, you keep saying the courts have allowed for this to happen. So I pulled up, I did a little more reading on that Sauk Rapids case that you seem to like to use to defend some of the decisions. And that case was, well, the lower court upheld the unconstitutionality of it, and then they moved to another court, and then, of course, it got changed. So I guess the higher court always is smarter and better than the lower court somehow. That's a given, I guess. But do you really know what that court case was all about? It was in a city municipality. The mayor had gotten complaints of barking dogs and odor in a city, Sauk Rapids, neighbors living close to each other. That's what it was. Then if you go to look at their ordinance, they changed, all they did was change the number of dogs. They have a limit, I want to say, I think it's 4 breeding dogs. So it wasn't anything, and I looked at a number of court cases that were brought up, and nobody banned anything. They usually restricted the numbers. But, of course, in cities, there is no dimensional, in planning and zoning in counties, we work with dimensions. There's setbacks, there's building size, there's, that type of thing. But in the city, they had no dimensions that the dog owner. Oh, and I found very interesting. One of the first things is that the people who wanted more dogs didn't ask all their neighbors if it was okay. That was a stumbling block, that they didn't ask all the neighbors if it was okay. And on our conditional use permits, we have the townships weigh in on it, and we send notices to, immediate neighbors. There's a dimensional setting, how many neighbors get notice if something's happening. So we've done those things. So the basis that you're using of this Holt versus Sauk Rapids, I find it very weak to relate to the same thing that we are doing with the conditional use permit. And then there's no rational basis to ban or change it. What is it and it's the 3, I'm looking at the 3, what is the problem with the conditional use permit process if staff has already said there is no foreseen problem? So what is the problem that we're trying to, what's a solution to this problem that we have? Because I don't know what the problem is.
Mr. Kranz raised his hand.
So I could see where you could reach the conclusions you've reached by reading cases cold out of without context or understanding of how precedent is formed. So the only things that matter in a case as far as precedent are decisions the court reached that were necessary for it to reach its conclusion. So one of the very early things that court had to decide is there a rational relationship between ordinances regulating dogs and the public health and welfare?
Of course, when you're sitting in a town and a house you reach out and touch your neighbors, I could see where that could be a problem. But when we have dimensional setbacks and requirements and things like that,
Right, and that case is cited only for that point. That's all I use it for, is to say that there's a rational relationship between regulating dogs and public health and welfare.
Court didn't think so, so I guess, there's a matter in courts, a difference of opinion.
Well, there isn't, because the appellate court prevails and the Supreme Court prevails over the appellate court. As far as the meaning of emergency appears 2,516 times in Minnesota statutes,
Right,
and
but
over
what is-
10,000 times
That's a word, but
Yeah.
what is the emergency in this case? I mean,
So-
do we have a
so-
disease or a
So are you familiar with the phrase, a term of art?
term of art?
Yeah. So if I use the word set, and had a cup of coffee and I'm going to set it here, it means one thing. If we're running if we're fishing and I set a hook, it means another thing. Okay, so a lot of words in law and in statutes have specifically defined meanings that are different depending on how they are being used. So emergency, your definitions of urgency are entirely accurate, the general common understanding of emergency. But if you go into the statutes and start looking up emergency, you'll find a dozen different definitions of emergency that only apply to the law contained in that portion of the statute.
Okay, so give me an
Right.
example of what the emergency is with dog breeding in Winona County.
So,
The planning commission doesn't see an emergency either. I mean, I'm not alone. It was a 6-2 vote.
so again, emergency is not defined in that statute, but the Attorney General did analyze it and release an opinion stating that if a county does not have the information it needs to be able to make the land use decisions and know they are carrying out the comprehensive plan, then that is an emergency. It's a very technical, limited definition of the word that is not how it is commonly used, but is how it's interpreted in that statute.
What do we need?
Technically and limited, it seems very gray to me. I mean, I guess I can't picture that it is an emergency. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess I just,
So, and I'm just trying to be very level-headed. What is it that we need?
Well, the findings of fact, I think the board adopted lay that out.
We had it in 2023. It said there's no problem.
yeah.
No, that was the planning commission.
No, I'm saying, but the staff said there was no issue. I mean, that's what I'm asking. Like, what are we missing here? Something, if one emergency, what you want, but it's got to come down to define it how you want. And that definition should say, this is what's needed. So I'm genuinely asking, what are we missing?
You're missing an interim period where you study the issue to determine if a change is needed.
Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Olson's had it for a while, but
I'm
Well-
sorry, I missed it.
I did want to speak.
I got a question for Doug. Or maybe Steve, you could answer it. Steve, will you stay there? To expedite the process, we could eliminate the declaration of an emergency and choose option 2. Am I correct?
Yeah,
Could
you could-
restart the process?
Yep, you could restart the process. All the options that Steve outlined for you today, you could select one of them or all of them, really.
And I'll add that you only need the emergency to initiate the interim ordinance process. The finding has already been made by the board, so it would not be necessary if you didn't do the interim ordinance, and it's not necessary for the planning commission to address that issue.
And I don't want to speak for Steve, but I will. So the reason why he started the process with an interim ordinance, providing us an interim ordinance, is because he really wanted the county in all of its facets, including the planning commission, to be deliberative so that when we ultimately pass an ordinance, that we have a body of work that supports our decisions so that when we do get in court, we can refer to that. And so when we don't have those things, or when we run amok with our own processes, we allow people to, those are opportunities for people to bring cases in court. And we have better things to do, so.
Thank you. Commissioner.
But
Olson.
before we go
I'm sorry,
any further,
Commissioner Olson, were you
what's
finished?
the problem? What do we?
You finished?
Yeah, I'm finished.
problem that
Commissioner
we
Meyer
need
and
to fix?
Commissioner Ward.
So, thanks. I've attended either in person or watched every planning commission meeting that pertains to this topic. So when Ms. Qualley and her staff, I don't know that they inspected every one of the facilities, but they had a checklist. They shared the checklist with us. They were not considering animal welfare because they told us at the time, we're not qualified to judge animal welfare. Their stance had always been, we're only qualified to talk about land use. But back in February, I spent, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes reading from USDA inspection reports going back over a decade that show violations where breeders in Winona County didn't get veterinary care for their dogs, where they had cages that were so small the dog couldn't turn around, where the dog hadn't been groomed so their eyes were matted shut and they had sores under their fur. The conditions weren't sanitary. And there are violations that go all the way to 2023. So I'm not going to read them again because many of these arguments, we've already had them and we've had them several times. And we can have them when we actually get to the point of debating an ordinance. It was very stark to me, listening to the Planning Commission last week, that they either didn't read or they didn't listen to evidence such as the USDA reports, or they have rejected those reports as not valid. So both Chair Flynn and Mr. Ryman talked about the USDA, its authority to inspect, that they would have taken action if there had been violations, which really kind of flies in the face of information that we've been given. There are violations. They didn't shut down, nor did they apply any fines or punish those individuals who had animal welfare violations. We have had folks from what I consider mainstream groups like the Humane Society or the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals talk to us about the lawsuits that they've filed against the USDA because they've failed to protect animals when there are welfare issues. And Mr. Flynn, the Chair Flynn talked about how he's a dentist and all of his records are public. Therefore, everything from the Board of Animal Health must follow that it would be public and we could get that information on kennels in our county. But that's not true. It is considered private data. So we know that there are animal welfare violations. And the inspections that were performed that showed no situation, it wasn't designed to look at animal welfare. So I don't know why, even in your comments, Commissioner Ward, at that Planning Commission meeting, and even now, you are rejecting the evidence that's public, that's been given from that we can get. But in my mind, that's why we're saying there's an animal welfare issue and that the industry doesn't address it. That the bodies who should be addressing it aren't, and that one way to keep the business from expanding is to ban any new kennels. And the second part is to consider having our own licensure, even if it was as simple as saying, when we know that there are USDA inspection violations and the USDA chooses to do nothing about it, Winona County could do something about it. And to me, that's the whole point of why we keep discussing it. And it does seem, when I listen to the Planning Commission, that yes, there's a giant divide. I listen to what they say. I watch their meetings. I don't know that they watch our meetings.
Commissioner Ward?
Well, some of those cases that I believe, have been correct, those situations have been corrected. I can't say 100%, but I know there has been great improvement. And I don't know if any of the most recent active conditional use permit holders are in violation. Again, staff said what they inspected, they saw no problems. And the animal welfare is under the sheriff. So if there was something with animal welfare, the sheriff should have been contacted by somebody.
The USDA is the body along with the Board of
No,
Animal
if you read
Health.
statutes, the sheriff in each county is the animal welfare local response. So he should have been contacted and then followed up with whoever he needed to be.
He's told us that he doesn't want to do that.
Well, that's, again, then we have to hold him to his responsibilities and go from there. So the current conditional use permit holders, again, they're saying there is no, violations. And yes, some of those cases on a national level, we wouldn't want those situations in Winona County. Those are cases that were somewhere in Minnesota. I don't think anything was in
Yes, it was. So
Winona County.
this is the most recent report
Okay, I
put out
think-
by the Humane Society of the horrible 100.
Yeah,
Yeah,
what's the
okay.
date on that?
Altura, 2024.
Okay, I apologize. El Cura? Who's the conditional permit holder?
I don't have that information.
Then how do we know what you have is it's not reported there? Anyway, so
So there's one in Faribault, and I really would prefer to not.
we're not
name-
Faribault.
I
We're-
would prefer
we
to
can
not
only-
name these individuals right here at this meeting,
Well,
right?
it's a public document.
But it's in Utica.
Okay, Utica, not Altura, Utica. Okay, well, so again, animal welfare is under the sheriff. And if anything's going on, regardless, it should be addressed. No, we do not want animal welfare. We don't want any animal to be not treated well.
Commissioner
Go
Olson?
ahead.
I just wanted to ask a simple question. We said that the sheriff doesn't want to do this, but if we pass ordinances and laws,
Yes.
how are we going to enforce it if the sheriff doesn't want to do it? What's the difference? I'm just logically, tell me what changes. I mean, we can pass all the ordinances we want. Are you
Right.
gonna go out and do it? You wanna volunteer? So
mean,
where I'm going with this is
Do you
that,
want an answer?
no, not yet.
Step forward. All right,
Just on the
that's fine.
floor. So my thing is that we can rebuttal things to this, but I'm gonna go back to a couple things. I don't know if there's ever really gonna solve the issue between the mindset of, I think, what rural looks at something and perhaps people that are a little more disconnected from what rural communities look and see things. Animal welfare to me is any animal. It doesn't make a difference. But at the end of the day, I'm a logical person, very logical person. The reality of it is even if this succeeds, and I know Commissioner Olson, I respect what you're trying to do here, I really do. But the box in which it's being looked at, the supply and the demand is what, this is economics 101. All this does is shift where this is going to happen. And the greater fear that I have is that it's going to put it back into the hands of people we really don't want it into. Because it's like anything else. If you limit the supply, you're going to increase the likelihood of somebody that you want to get into it to not be into it. So I'm just trying to figure out what the end goal is here. Is it a feel good that we banned it, we regulated it somehow? That doesn't change what the actual issue, the problem is. I feel like embracing this and saying, hey, we've got people that want to do this. Can we work with it? Can we say, hey, there's a better, rather than just going out here, I see the end goal as banning. I see the end goal as regulation through licensure, forfeiture, and closing them down through licensure. Hey, you made an infraction, you lose your license, right? That's where I see this going, unfortunately, but it doesn't actually fix the problem. I think it actually steers it towards a bigger problem, which it goes underground. It goes to the places that you don't want it because population's increasing. People want more animals. It's not going to go away. If the demand could be met through the private sector, it would be there already. And the fact of the matter is that it isn't. And that's why these exist. So what does this change? I don't think it's going to change anything. I think it's actually going to make it more grotesque and lead this in the direction where I would think people that could see right past here, look, it looks good at the surface. It looks good here. But way out here, it just creates a whole new problem. This is supply and demand. It's economics 101. This is fifth grade stuff. So what's the ultimate goal? I think if the ultimate goal is to just ban this in Winona County, feel sorry for the dogs.
Commissioner Meyer?
Yeah. So just to sort of, you and I had almost this verbatim argument the last time we discussed this. So I'm going to make this really brief. One of the things that we could do is to simply have our ordinance incorporate the results of inspections that actually happen. If the USDA doesn't want to do anything about it, we could revoke the conditional use permit. If we had our own licensure with our own set of rules, that would give us the ability. Now, could we work with them to fix it? Well, that's, yeah, sure, that's something that's possible. We could certainly look at it. To the idea that it goes underground, I guess I'd say that just because pornography moves somewhere else doesn't mean that we don't have an ordinance to try and address pornography. And why do we do that? For the public welfare. Not because it's necessarily a land use issue, but because we have moral beliefs about how, in this case, how animals should be treated. And if we don't have the expertise, the bodies that do the inspection, but don't actually take any action afterwards, we could just use their inspections and decide to take action afterwards. So I see lots of ways in which we are not just trying to ban it, we're actually trying to improve the conditions for animals in a situation that is not acceptable.
Commissioner Olson?
I understand your pornography But it's two different things here. You're right, it can be produced somewhere else, but at the same time, you're right, it can be produced somewhere else. Meaning that even if found in some sort of violation, the demand still doesn't go away. It's going to happen. So a tangible object versus something like that, we're looking at two different scenarios. So the only way this goes away is if people no longer want to obtain an animal. That's it. I promise you, supply and demand will come into play. And the reality of it is that we've got an opportunity here to embrace this. And if you made a comment, Commissioner Meyer, and again, I am looking at this 100% logically. If the USDA can't enforce it and we decide to ban it and they move to a different location, whether it's governed by the USDA or whether it goes underground, either way, it's equal to or worse than the current situation. Tell me I'm wrong. I'll debate you. It doesn't change anything because it's still going to be regulated by the same force that's regulating it here, or it's going underground. So it doesn't change anything. So again, it's just a feel good. It's just, oh, look at what we did. Now, on a moral basis, you're right. I don't want to see it, but I'm flipping it on its head saying, why don't we embrace the opportunity and say, hey, we could be the center of making sure that animals are treated correctly. And we already have a situation where the sheriff should be seeing what's happening in these USDA reports. And if there's something there, that department should be overseeing it, which the ultimate outcome of this is to put in an ordinance that says the sheriff should go out and oversee what's happening. It's like the roundabout way to get back to the same thing that we're already at. And then the answer is, well, the sheriff doesn't want to go do it. Well, what's going to make him go do it even if we go through all the steps? So I'm not sure, maybe the legal procedure that we can hold them accountable to that or something. I'm honestly trying to figure out what we're doing here.
And so two things from the exchange I want to point out is receiving that information about a potential problem in Utica and the way that information came to the county is an example of how difficult it is to get information that's usable to county staff to deal with these issues. That's a report put out by a third party. When they put it out, who knows? A board member happened to see it or maybe looks for it or maybe part of the organization shares it with the board. Still, planning has no knowledge of it, until then. And I don't know if the name of the kennel is on there or not, but that's the type of thing I encountered when I started researching this issue, is it's just hard to get information. When the sheriff gives someone a citation for driving while intoxicated, that automatically comes over to the county attorney's office and we process it, goes to the court makes a rule, goes to the corrections, probation, whatever. There's this whole flow of information that works to solve that problem. But that doesn't exist here. And you could dig to find a lot of the information, but you have to dig. And for example, the Board of Animal Health has a list of commercial dog breeders in Minnesota, correct? On their website. And of course, it doesn't say what county they're in. If you try to copy and paste that list from their website, you can't, because they've gone to the trouble of making it an image that isn't text-based. So it shows you 10 and then it.
Talk to people, talk to people at all these agencies. And I even ask you here, if you've done a data request for information and it says you haven't. There hasn't been a request that has been denied. Well, I'm sorry, there hasn't been a request that has been denied outright. Obtaining routine from websites is awfully difficult, but if you talk to people.
Right, and I know planning has done that before and has requested information and has received it. Sometimes it took a while and took they have rules for when they could release information. The other thing.
It's probably a higher court to put that rule in place, so we have to respect that.
It's not a court, it's the statute.
It's a statute, yeah.
And then the other thing I would say is that if the county is aware that it has problems with kennels, with humane treatment of animals in kennels, like that report says, and the county is aware that the sheriff is refusing to enforce the welfare laws, that seems to be something that it would be prudent to address one way or another, whether it's with Commissioner Elsing's suggestion or something else. But I would say from a legal standpoint, it is not a good idea to leave that hanging out there.
No, but the sheriff has said, and I've had conversations with him, the only thing he had was some barking dogs, and we have a barking dog ordinance. He has not been told of any, mistreatment, and I think you
Right,
even
that's-
state that in here.
And that's, again, the USD report shows mistreatment, but it didn't make its way to the
I
sheriff.
don't think that's verified, that report.
And that's still
Duzak?
the problem.
Yep, the sheriff's not here, so, but I'm going to take the opportunity to defend the sheriff. I had a department head meeting today, where we talked about this issue, and he has been out at, and has had to respond to calls in the past. So, and they do respond to animal welfare. They do animal welfare checks. So I don't want to suggest or leave the impression that the sheriff is not doing.
But
I-
no rampant problem.
If I might, I'm just going by what I was told.
Right, and I'm just going.
What I
just
heard
wanted to
was
clear
the
the
sheriff
record
doesn't
there.
want to do it.
What he
If
said.
that's the case, what would change?
Commissioner Nelson.
Great debate. But we could end the debate with a vote. How about? I'm gonna make a motion. I'm sorry, I got the.
Commissioner Olson.
I'm gonna make a motion that we start with option 2, restart the process, and go with the direction that is written here in our agenda.
I'll second that.
There'll be further discussion. So motion by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner Meyer to go with what's listed on page 162 as option number 2, restart the process of amending Winona County zoning ordinance, but without seeking an interim ordinance for additional study first. This would generally include the following, and there's 2 other items. Commissioner Ward.
Well, again, nobody answered the question why they feel the current CUP process is not working, because you can limit, and I have said this about any conditional use permit, you can condition anything out of existence. We have parameters, we have size, we have setback, we have number of dogs, we have, we were supposed to be provided a zip file, but I never received that. I don't know if it got lost in our email problem. But I thought most every conditional use permit always has an annual inspection as the list of conditions. So what is it about, and the planning commission will ask this, what is it about the current conditional use permit process that's not working? Is there a condition that needs to be put in there? Commissioner Meyer said,
I believe
We
I've
want
answered the
rule-
question.
we want copies of any Department of Ag, and they have inspections. They put them in frames and post them in their buildings. So again, what are we trying to, the planning commission feels that the process is working. So holding another public hearing, that would be their obligation, the planning commission, to do another public hearing within 60 days, make recommendations. Well, they've kind of told you the recommendations. So what kind of new information are we going to be looking for? And how are we going to, if you're going to study this, how are you going to come up with an impartial study? I guess it doesn't say study, it just says sold up another. But I know a study's been mentioned. Who's going to do any kind of studying? The planning department has their table full. They say they're not experts at it, which I don't expect them to be. I know they've got their table full. I don't expect the county attorney's office to study it. And to tell you quite frankly, I don't think I would get an impartial, non-prejudicial study by anybody internally. So who would provide new information? The planning commission feels that they've got all the information they need, and kind of stand by the April 23rd. So what's another public hearing going to do? What kind of information are you going to need through another public hearing? We can get all the people to stand up and testify the woe is me. We'll have all the ASPCA ads coming on at Christmas time now, looking for your 1999 with all the celebrities,
This is where all these dogs are gonna go.
Yeah. I don't know what another public hearing is going to do.
It's required. It's a step in the process. Any other discussion?
Rose-colored glasses.
You know what I find is inhumane treatment is, thank you, Commissioner Vagley, for making a visit to one of the breeders. What I find is inhumane, I'm an outdoors person and such, and I find inhumane, you talk about mistreating an animal. How many animals, even within the city of Winona, they spend their day in a house or a kennel or an apartment. The owner comes home at night, puts them on a rope, takes them out to do their business on a boulevard or in the street or something, and hopefully it gets picked up. Then they go back to their apartment, to their kennel. How many hours a day does an average dog living in the city of Winona get to run free and play in an open space? I find that inhumane treatment, if you want to talk about situations. And these dogs, at the one particular we went to, they get a half hour in the morning and a half hour at night to go out and play. So again, you want to talk about observations and preferences and personal interpretations of inhumane treatment. I consider a dog living in a city on the end of a rope inhumane treatment.
Commissioner Ellison.
I don't disagree. You know, so I take my dog to work every day with me. The reality of it is that the SPCA exists because if there wasn't a demand for the breeding purposes of these dogs and it wasn't happening in the inhumane way, it clearly shows there is a demand
There's problems.
that people are willing to actually do it to that fashion because there's enough money in it. Actually, it's just rose-colored glasses. It's just leading down that path.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Okay.
Motion passes 3-2. Is there anything else I need to be clarified at this point,
Stick
Mr.
me.
Kranz or Ms. Buzak? Is that enough for now?
When does the 60 days start? When does the planning commission need to have a
Tomorrow.
public hearing?
Tomorrow.
Christmas Eve?
Tomorrow.
No, that would be 30 days.
I can give you a little bit of clarification. So based on that motion, we'll prepare the ban and bring that to plan commission.
No, that isn't, no, this is just to start the no, don't talk ban. You're being prejudicial already. I'm sorry.
No?
We're supposed to be
The
neutral.
motion was?
No, this doesn't say anything about an amendment for a ban. I don't read that under number 2. This is just holding a public hearing again. We're starting.
What was?
No, I'm looking at number 2 on page 162.
What was before the plan commission was they had 2 choices. They could either choose a moratorium with an interim ordinance. They could recommend or not recommend. And by not recommending, that puts us the way we have it understood based on previous actions taken by this body, that we would proceed with a ban.
See, that's being very prejudicial.
No, it's not. It was the information we provided for you. Yeah. So we're only acting on the February motion.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right. Is there anything else we need to clarify?
Well, just to finish, so that means that at the next plan commission, we'll introduce that ordinance with that language in there. Then they will have to schedule a, they'll have, how does that go? 60 days to schedule a,
Yeah, they have to, the ordinance says that they have to provide their recommendation to the board after the next board meeting after the public hearing, but it does have that 60-day limit. What they are supposed to do when the statute or the language is sent to them, they then put out when schedule the public hearing and determine if there's any additional information that they want to consider.
and then they would make a recommendation to the board, and then the board would have 60 days to enact the ordinance after that. The whole process shouldn't take more than 120 days. Meanwhile, the tabled version of the moratorium, the plan commission can either act or not act on that. And then, but ultimately, this body will have to, the way I interpret it, will have to act in the moratorium as well.
So which document are you saying you're working off of? tell me exactly the dated one so I know what packet to look at.
I believe it was the February 13th, 2024.
Word packet that has that document in it.
Our
So I've
packet?
got the right one,
I think
not
so.
the modified one, not the one that's missing something or anything else.
That's where the original motion came forward.
Okay, so February 13th, 2024 board
14th,
packet.
yep.
When the board adopted the findings of fact in support of an emergency for an interim ordinance, I did present the changes to the ordinances that would be needed to carry out the February motion that the board.
Can you
adopted.
resend me those? Because some of this stuff, that email thing through the system I lost things.
In this body adopts
Please.
those findings and at the August 27th.
Okay, send those all again, please.
Sure.
Because like I said, I lost some things when we had this email thing back. And again, part of my angst was, and this board knows me well enough, and you will know me well enough, you do not hand me answers at a meeting. That is just wrong to ask me to make decisions and make a vote and it wasn't just me, it was two other planning commission members had asked questions, and we received this at our packet last Thursday night. I
If I could
appreciate
speak-
that you
Yep.
tried to get the answers. I know it wasn't easy and it was difficult, but again, don't hand me answers and then ask me to take action the same.
That's right. And if I could just speak to the process, though, of how we interact with the Plan Commission or with this body, the way that should come, because in this case, your questions came to me directly.
I send
Yep.
them directly to you. I'm not going to use a
And-
third party.
Well, and then what I asked then Maureen was, is this coming from county board or is this coming from Plan Commission? Because based on that answer would help me answer those questions.
I'm sorry, I wear both hats, so I mean, again,
Well, that would require,
all the questions, which we will,
right, so going forward, I would hope that's how there would be, where the questions would come into the chair, whether the chair of this group and then to Maureen and then up through us. The other thing is, if there's legal questions in there that require Steve's or the attorney's office, those for sure need to go through Maureen.
let me copy both of you to keep you in the loop.
Well, because there's other things that they're working on, believe it or not, other than land use stuff. And so we need to understand that they're a much more even limited resource than we are. So in this case, Potter's questions, Commissioner Potter's questions were answered to him. We received those previously. And then the questions that we got from you came in later, and then we got questions even later from Shep. And so, like I said, in the future, we're just going to have that be a little more orderly so that they come in and go out at the same time. I know. And I,
Orders either.
and I did,
I'm going to ask it, and I'm
Right.
going to jump through a lot of hoops to get my answers.
right, and so
I'll try and play.
we had a meeting with Commissioner Flynn as well, the chairman, before, and we asked him if he had any additional questions or if there was anything else we could do in support of this. And at that time, that was no, his answer was no.
And to add to Commissioner Ward's question, I think that if a county board commissioner asks you a question, correct me if I'm wrong, they shouldn't have to go through the board chair, and they shouldn't have to go through Maureen. They can ask you the question directly. Is that fair to say?
If it's straightforward, simple.
Okay.
If it's,
Going to ask for a lot of research, a lot of legal
fair.
analysis.
Oh, absolutely.
and germane to whatever
Perfect.
that
Yeah,
is,
that makes total sense.
and I don't have a problem with that. In
It can
fact,
be reasonable.
that's right,
I
and,
mean,
you know, and
fairly
you're welcome to
straightforward.
call as well.
And
You
when
can call.
possible, you would try to get the answer. But it sounds like there was time limits, but if when possible, try to get them sooner.
I don't respond well to that.
Yeah, thank you for all your.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer.
Being honest with you, if you do it, you're going to get some backlash.
You know, Mr. Ward, I've worked with you a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm aware of when my lashings are coming. Thank
That's
you.
right. And I will have to say, you've been doing a very good job of getting me answers. You have. I greatly appreciate that.
Meeting will continue to the morale improve.
Approved, exactly. All right, I think that moves on to item 10.4. Set date for local sales tax, local sales and use tax ordinance and resolution public hearing. That sounded strange how I read that. Is that for us or is that?
It's as soon as possible. We just have to set a.
So the
public
recommendation
hearing.
is the 20th, right? Friday, December 20th.
Yeah, we need to get it set. We have to have a public hearing. I've drafted the ordinance. Everything's there for you to look at, but not make a decision on tonight. Have the public hearing on the 20th,
Perfect.
and then
What date? That's a board meeting?
That's
Yeah.
that's the last one.
It's a
at
Thursday.
9 a.m., right?
Oh, so it's not,
Friday, December 20th at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
Yes.
so that's not the regular meeting of the night.
No, it's this, if you look on page
Yeah.
172.
It's swapped.
We changed due to the holiday.
Yeah, yeah. So 9 o'clock, the 20th.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner
I
Meyer.
cannot come on that day. I'm hoping that there's still a quorum. I am on the search committee for Micah, and that is the day we are doing interviews in person in the cities, so I will be there all day.
So the 19th is a night meeting. This is going to be a morning meeting.
The 19th would be planning commission.
Yeah, there's not.
We don't have.
The other meeting. is
Thursday.
Yeah, normally this, it would be.
Our first meeting, chair is the 5th at 6 o'clock.
Right.
And we also have truth and taxation.
Right.
And then we have a December 20th meeting at 9
9.
o'clock.
Oh,
Which
so
we
we
moved
got you.
what-
Perfect. Yeah.
We moved the
So-
Whitewater Joint Power Board meeting accordingly.
Perfect. So this is going to be adding to the already existing meeting.
See, I get the 5th, right? I got
At
that.
6
And the 10th, right?
and the 20th
No, the
at
5th and
9.
the 10th
No,
Not the 10th.
20th,
of December.
the
No meeting on
20th,
the
no meeting.
That's the AMC conference conflict.
that's what I asked
So
Miss Hunt.
December 5th
There's a third,
at
that's,
6 o'clock, December 20th at 9 o'clock.
that was my comment at the end of the.
So is the one on the 5th is a full meeting. It's not just truth and taxation.
Correct. And it's truth and taxation.
Okay, thank you, because I,
And so you need a motion to set the public hearing for December 20th, at
Right.
Yes.
9 o'clock meeting. So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, motion by Commissioner Ward, second by Commissioner Olson to set the date for the public hearing on December 20th. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 5-0.
That's it.
okay, so the
Correct.
regular,
9 o'clock.
the regular board meeting on the 5th is at 6 PM.
Right.
That's actually, I also bring up at the end of the meeting, just to make sure we're all the same, and for the press is aware of that and the public. And then the second meeting is on the 20th. That's a morning meeting.
9 o'clock.
When is this?
But then there's, oh, so the 20th,
Same day as the county board.
wait a minute,
Yeah.
the 20th
It's
is the
just-
last meeting of the year?
Yes.
Well, crap, that's when we set the levy for real. I can't not be there. Well, damn, okay.
Oh, my.
We'll have to get out of this other commitments. All right,
Right. Item 10.5, and were we finished with the dates?
What else? Did you need something else?
So we actually have 3 things happening the morning on the 20th. We have the public hearing, we have the truth and taxation, and a regular county board meeting.
No, truth and taxation is on the 5th.
Oh, that's the 5th, excuse me. Yeah, so the 20th, we just have, I've got a Whitewater Joint Power Board. We moved it. That's what those are the 3 things. Okay, we got it.
Okay. All right, then that takes us to item 10.5, discuss 2025 draft budget. Mr. Elliott?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, this is just an update on the 2025 budget process. Sounds really loud, sorry. Just to kind of bring you up to speed from the last time we went, September 24th, when the preliminary levy was set for 2025. So a lot has happened and changed since then, so this is a good time to bring you up to speed and current with where things sit. So I'll go ahead and jump into it. So A couple of I'll just walk you through what is in the draft budget now as compared to 2 months ago. And the 30% increase in health insurance was there before, it's still there. The capital budget, capital expenditures are there, and they've been reduced a bit. And I can answer why later. We've got, also have the contractual wage and benefit increases of 6% roughly. The RAP Plus program funding it without a grant, so property tax will take the place of the grant to fund it. Outside agency requests at the same level as this year, 2024. What is also in the budget are net staffing increases of 4.5 positions. These are largely offset by revenue increases. Some of them will generate additional revenue. Overtime decreases in some cases, and then repurposing vacant positions. The net impact of the 4.5 positions, with all that being spoken for, is 230,000. That's
Not a plus, that's a minus. Still going to cost us 230,000
additional.
additional.
Yes,
Plus all the other funding streams you think can pay for them.
right.
Because outright 4 positions would be
Much more than
closer
that.
to
Yeah.
400,000
Yes,
plus 500,000.
yes. Yes. So that's the net.
Are we going to discuss these positions? Are we trying to make a fell swoop of,
It's intended as an update.
okay.
And then the next thing, this is something that was brought up previously, is turnover savings. I did a 3-year analysis looking at vacancies across the county. And so we have turnover savings budgeted in there at 400,000. It's a reduction to the salary expense. And this is, I think, the first time we've done this here. But Commissioner Ward, you brought that up, I think, more than once, especially the last time. So we plugged that in there. The next one is 240,000 in the budget for maintenance for a potential real estate purchase that hasn't been made yet, but still being considered. And then number 9 is I loaded the revenue for the recently approved jail funding sales tax, the referendum. So $1.3 million is about roughly 8 months worth of revenue. And that's what, after looking at how this thing was going to roll, the revenue will start, will start probably April 1. So that's pretty close to what we were talking about before.
That's the earliest it could start.
Earliest. If we,
The earliest is April.
April 1st.
yes. And that all depends upon all this other stuff that we've got to do before then, before the clock starts ticking on that. Because the state needs 90 days once we give them all the stuff before they can implement it for us. And then I'll just kind of walk you through where the levy sits. The levy, I put it in the day after we met on September 24th at 9%, because that's what you set it at. And then when the sales tax referendum passed, I reduced it by another $1.3 million. So that's where the levy sits in our budgeting software right now.
What does that relate to percentage?
I'll walk you through that
Okay,
next
I didn't
page.
See that? Did I see that?
Yeah,
I didn't see it in the pages though.
376, page 175.
The draft budget, as it sits right now, does not include any outside agency funding increases that they had requested. There's a couple of them, and it's in a subsequent page too. You'll see where they are. And then it does not include the half FTE increase for the U of M extension program, also known, I believe, as the 4-H program. And that's roughly 50,000. That's not in the budget either. Then the personnel request summary, Commissioner Holte and myself, we spent a lot of time talking to the departments, talking to the supervisors, talking to the sheriff, talking to all the folks that requested position increases next year, really developing the business cases around those. And, this is where we're at a point where we're ready to recommend or not recommend those positions. And, in the next 7 things here, you'll see the ones that we are recommending, and line by line, the impact on the budget, the net impact. So that would ultimately flow through to the levy. I'm not going to cover them in detail.
Well, you're recommending them all of these, all 7, right? 'Cause
These are the ones we are recommending. There was more requested and they're later on in the, you'll see there's a few that we did not. So that, then the next thing I want to show you here is the fund balance reserve. This is, there are a few, again, the fund balance is roughly just, what it represents is the cumulative difference between revenues and expenses. So if your revenues exceed expenses in a year, your fund balance goes up. If there's a deficit, the fund balance goes down. And we have a policy here of maintaining 3/12 fund balance reserve, 3/12 of operating expenditures in 1 year. And so you'll see the calculation here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but what I do want to draw your eyes to is the column on the right, the 2025 column, and 5 rows down, the total fund balance operating unrestricted, and this is kind of what I'm forecasting for 2025, roughly $18 million of unrestricted fund balance. Our policy, the 3/12 policy, is at 14.1. So what that means is our fund balance reserve is roughly 3.8 million higher than our policy. Now, I would say that that's not a bad position to be in because we do have things that happen in a year that are unexpected, such as repairs to the, I think, am I pointing in the right direction? The law enforcement center, because we only got 750 in the budget for next year and we knocked that way down. There's, a lot more that can happen. So where would we go to pay for that? We would go to
No, you got
fund balance.
3.9 million in there for that, not 750,000. That's just,
They asked for.
No, that's not budgeted. I'm not sure what you're looking at,
looking at the
Commissioner Ward.
capital request.
That's what they requested. That's not.
Okay, you're just saying, okay, then I'm
They asked for
misreading
me.
the chart.
They asked for $1.5 million.
Yeah, look at the 2025 recommend column. The 750 for emergency repairs.
Okay, you're just at that 750 is in the budget.
Yes,
Okay, I read the chart wrong then. Thank you. I'm sorry.
sure. And that would, the fund balance reserve, if you will, would cover revenue shortfalls. And, we have those quite often, not so much in property taxes, of course, but in Fund 5 and Health and Human Services, you see that all the time. And you can see right here where I'm projecting Health and Human Services to dig into fund balance by $1 million, where expenses are going to exceed revenues by $1 million. So it does happen. And, fund balance, we use it for one-time spending. We've got it strategically or tactically. We're using it in 2025 to pay for some capital. And so there's a couple of other things that I think we're planning to use it for. So I don't think it's an excess. It is an excess, but I don't think it's a ridiculous excess at this point. That's just my advice to you. I'll say the next thing is the preliminary property tax levy. So I'll walk you through where this sits as of today, November.
Page 1.
Yes. Okay.
I apologize.
Nope, that's fine. So it's just a table here. I'll just going from left to right. The 2024 levy, that's this year, is at 24,790,000. And then at the preliminary levy, that adoption in September 24th, a 9% increase brought it to 27,021,000. Then when the referendum passed for the sales tax on November 5th, I lowered it by $1.3 million. So the property tax levy in our budgeting system right now sits at 25,721,000, which is a 3.76 increase over 2024. That's where it sits right now. The budget overall for the entire county, the expenses exceed the revenues by 342,000. So we have a budget deficit right now of 342,000. And I'll just mention that 70% of that is a number that you didn't know about in September, which is the line item placeholder that I put in there for potential real estate purchases of 240,000. So, you know, if you take that out, it's really, really close. So,
It's almost a point.
Yep,
Yeah, well, yeah, it is.
1%.
yes.
Commissioner Elson, do you want to finish the thought?
The other question I had, leading back to the 750,000 that's in the budget, correct,
For capital,
for capital. Did we deem that as necessary, or is that just, hey, in case it happens?
in case it happens. Now, there's a little bit in there. I mean, you know, if we go down the road of, hey, let's see what we can do with the law enforcement center. Let's do a study or space planning or, you know, come out of that. But if nothing breaks over there, we're not going to spend any money.
So the question I have is, why put it on the levy if it can stay in the unrestricted reserve? Basically, just leave it in the reserves, and if we need it. My fear is this: when it's there in the budget, it's easily spent. When it has to be asked for if something comes up, it's because, I don't know what I'm allowed to say, but if there's other ideas that potentially happen, we've really got to take this thing very strategic and say, hey, I realize that maybe you think it is, but it might not be. I'm being careful in my words, right? Because of our previous conversations. I'm not saying to remove all of it. I'm just saying, is it necessary that it's there when we have the discretion to approve it really in a drop of a hat anyway? And in an emergency situation, it's already there. I mean, there's a difference between saying, hey, the money exists and go do these projects versus, hey, if it really is necessary, we'll approve what needs to happen if it were to come up.
Commissioner Elsing, if you go to the capital summary page, I don't know what page number that is, but
176.
176. If you look at the very bottom, it shows you how all the capital is getting paid for. 2 million is bonding. That's going to cover the roof, essentially.
Yeah.
$1.5 million is funding out of reserve, so we're not using property tax.
So it's not coming, that's not coming out of the levy. Okay, that was my question. Was it first? I was assuming it's coming out of the levy. Okay.
We haven't approved bonding for the roof.
No, not yet.
No, not yet. Okay, so there's no additional funds there. Is the 40,000, excuse me, for the tar, the blacktop there? I'm not saying it doesn't need to get done, but I own the property next to it. I drive by it all the time. I mean, it's better than some of the parking lots I own. And again, I'm not saying that at some point it needs to be done, but is it necessary this year? And is that coming in the levy or is that out of reserves?
Right now, we have levy of 152,000 covering the 3.6 million in capital. So
the blacktop would be on that.
you could probably say so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to find some areas that, you know,
Well, I have a
Just-
big question.
I apologize. Commissioner Meyer, then Commissioner Ward. I have a question about what you all go.
That's fine.
Commissioner Meyer.
Are you done? Yeah, okay. So I want to start by saying, I think you've done a fabulous job of figuring a way to cut $1 million out of what we saw from the budget. When we first discussed this during the summer. So thank you very much. In my opinion, it's kind of a miracle.
can be done.
So I have concerns. Okay, so I felt like trying to get us to 3.76 was always a big stretch. And it was a thing that I was always concerned about, and I still am. We had $1 million increase in health insurance, and that's all that we're getting paid for. We had $1.2 million in additional salaries. You figured out something else to cut in order to make that happen, and without cutting any employees or cutting any programs, and that's phenomenal. So I think, I mean, I don't have a problem at all making up that difference of the $342,000. The question is whether other commissioners feel like they could come up a point or a point and a half. I support that. The thing that I'm concerned about as well is, okay, the earliest we can start collecting the sales tax is April. And what if there's some kind of an unforeseen issue with the state, and we can't start until June. We'll need those reserves to cover that sort of thing. So I really feel like, no, spending down the reserves to the exact, absolute minimum is probably not a wise idea. So my preference would be to go with, at a minimum, the 5.14% that would meet the deficit, the difference in the expenses and revenue. In addition to that, I still would love to see us fully fund the Soil Water Conservation District. If we went to 4.2, that would take care of that. Yeah, so here's 5.14, 0.06% would be the 13,000 for the soil water. So that would take that to like 5.
Oh, you said 4 point.
Oh, I'm sorry, 5.2. So my recommendation is to go with what you've done and to say thank you.
Commissioner Ward.
Okay, a couple questions. You've got this, I'm not sold on this highway design engineer. You're saying it's going to be neutral, but in the budget, still you have under, and I think what Mr. Kramer referred to last time, all these contracts to design all these things. And I'm making the assumption that it falls under professional services. And just in the highway professional services, there was 4 line items that amounted to $608,100. Now, I don't know what, that's that mystery black hole that you folks have that I always question what all is in there. But so what are you saying? I didn't see the line item budget change to reflect this zero on the professional services contracts, if that's where it's coming from. And I just don't know if we need a full-time design engineer, because I'm sorry, we're not doing enough redos of roads, in my mind, to justify a full-time. And they're going to be usually are probably going to be a young, inexperienced, so there's going to be a lot of training and everything. So are we really, whereas when you do a road, you hire the contractor that's done these projects and you get a product, I'm questioning what we're really going to come out zero there.
So I cannot attest to all of the conversation because Mr. Elliott spoke with Mr. Kramer. But what I can share is part of this is stemming from the conversation I did have with Mr. Kramer in reference to succession planning. It won't be long and we're going to have turnover at the highway department. And I'm not saying Mr. Kramer's leaving. I'm
Right.
saying
Yeah.
we all get to a point in life where we start our next journey.
Right, right. Yep.
But we are not ready. We don't have anyone who's going to step into those shoes. So, and there's a science. I mean, Commissioner Elsing and Commissioner Ward, you both have been on the Road and Bridge Committee. You know that it takes quite a long time, I would say at least 18 months, to go through a full cycle of the projects and the budgeting and the various revenue sources and how do you coordinate all of those things. I just think it would be a detriment to the county if we do not be proactive in doing some kind of succession planning.
Doesn't need to happen this year.
But
I'm not saying it does, but when is when?
yeah,
How long are we going to take it down the road?
what you just said is
As long as we
great,
possibly can.
but do we have that in a development plan that Mr. Kramer, highway engineer, would be guiding that person in that? Because this says design engineer. That means I'm going to make this road go down this parallel line and it's going to be at this elevation and such. I totally understand what you're saying. That what you're referring to is more the management of the highway department. And I don't know if a design engineer is the right, but again, did you really save that much money when I see 608,000 under professional contracts? And somehow I don't know if you can take that line item budget and put what you changed.
I'm getting there right now.
Highlight it? Is it highlighted? I mean, I didn't see any highlights, so I don't know what you changed.
Mr. Elliott met multiple times. I had many questions on this, commissioners. I really did. I challenged both of them. And to the point, I think I annoyed them. But my point being is that I need to make sure that this is truly cost neutral.
Yep.
And it's going to meet the needs of long-term
Right. So
Okay.
Mr. Elliott needs to show me where he took off if it's in the professional and contract services, that number has gone down. And I couldn't
Well, it may
couldn't
not
see
be
that.
there because I know that there's also an engineering line item that could have been adjusted.
Okay.
Page 252.
Okay. Well, I'll have to go back and look. 252.
And we don't need to, we're not
Yep.
deciding tonight.
It's-
Something we
But
can.
you
yeah.
can follow up with me
Yeah.
and stuff. Because that's a lot of money in professional services, but it's a lot of money for a
So,
person.
I mean, it's mechanically what we did, Penny put in the position and I took the exact same dollar amount out of the contractual services line, dollar for dollar. So it's a net zero.
Okay. So do we have a document of what you changed in the line item budget? Because I have no idea of knowing where you made the changes.
Or,
When you start page 179 through 361 or whatever it is, I can't look at those line items and know what you changed
from which point?
to get down to your lower,
From September 24th till now?
yeah.
I've got a tracker.
Okay, I mean.
It's hundreds of lines.
Okay, but you can show what you changed.
So if you came in, if she came in, you could show her.
Sure, and I can, rather than grinding through all that, because a lot of it's small.
Yeah.
I mean, I can send you a summary of the adjustments that were, the major ones.
Okay.
I mean, like Chad Lang took 200,000 out of the budget for something he said. He renegotiated a software agreement, 200,000 out.
Okay, so that type of information would be valuable.
Alyssa and Health and Human Services found a revenue connection. She said 300,000, but I only put in 100, in the child welfare protection.
And it's because we're testing. We're
Yep.
testing to make sure that it will work.
I don't want to
We're
put
testing
300.
Capture of revenue. We still have time between now and the end of the year to make
Okay,
additional
great.
revisions, okay? But
Well, so
I
that-
was not comfortable reducing 300,000 without knowing it's going to work.
Okay, so these health and human service, it seems like we're growing that department by leaps and bounds with five, is it 5 different, no, human service, 4, health and human. So again, we're not a growth county. What's driving the need for 4 more? And I think they're all full-time. What's driving the
Well,
need for
one
4?
one is moving from part-time to full-time. It's the needs in the community, Commissioner Ward. The consumers are driving the workload,
Like,
the caseload. So, which is the one that we need to do in order for us to even increase or get the proper reimbursement? Is that in Karen Bunkowski or
It's
Alyssa Pacel's area?
that one, the lead social worker, children and family at the top. I think that's the one. No, BCBS, because, there's a number of them where there's a formula that Blue Cross, Blue Shield, where depending upon how many caseworkers you have managing.
well, you get paid X number.
Yep, and if you fall below that, your reimbursement rates drop. So if, the ratio between the number of clients you have versus the number of caseworkers, that ratio increases, they pay you less. Because their assumption is you're not doing the job anymore.
Not having as much follow-up and contact
yes.
with the consumer.
And so 2 or 3 of these in here, I can't think of off the top of my head, 2 or 3 of those are in that situation. I think it's the one at the bottom here.
I thought it was number 7, the Health and Human Services Social Worker one, where because the caseloads are so high, our rate has dropped drastically. And we're actually getting less reimbursement today than we were a year ago.
And the rules change too at the state level about what the number of hoops you got to jump through and whatever to get the reimbursements. So, I mean, maybe the volume stays the same here and the number of workers stay the same, but the requirements from the state change. So all of a sudden it takes up a lot more time.
I'd hate to see us as a growth county. I don't know what we'd be doing. We're stagnant.
Commissioner Elson.
I want to go back to the 300,000, 100,000 thing. Completely appreciate where you were going with that, but the question my fear with that type of thing, it doesn't matter what board or company you run, is, yeah, we look at it, but if we budget the funds, it means we automatically take it from the taxpayer. And they may or may not get it back, whether or not that happens or not. Meaning that if it's part of the levy, correct? I mean, that extra 200,000, you said it's gonna take it from 300,000 to 100,000? Is that what I heard correctly?
The supervisor estimated a cost recapture, a revenue recapture of approximately 300,000 by changing the process.
Right,
However, we're testing to see if that is accurate.
right.
So in the meantime, Mr. Elliott reduced it to 100,000 until we can verify that, yep, this is going to work.
Right. So if it does work, where does the other 200,000 end up?
Well, it'll be actualized in 2025. So the revenue will be higher than the budget. And so we'll adjust the budget for 2026 to
And it should go into
reflect
reserves.
Well,
actuality. It will for 1 year.
If Health and
for
Human
one year.
Services loss is less than it would have been otherwise, that's
Well,
where it will go.
I guess
They lost a
my thing is a little bit backwards, because what we're really doing is we're saying, hey, okay, taxpayer, give us some more money in case this does or doesn't work. And my thing would be, hey, let's just assume it's gonna work. And if it doesn't work, that's what our reserve fund is for, because otherwise it just automatically increases the taxes, whether it happens or not. And my thing is, let's not increase the tax. And if it does, that's why we have a reserve. And then next year, we might have to adjust and go up with that to make the reserve back up. It's, to me, it's backwards. I'm gonna take this from you in case it doesn't work, when we already have a fund that's designed for that process. And guess what? If we have to dip out of that fund because it didn't work, next year we'll make it back up. Because the taxes never go back down. We keep raising them and raising them and raising them and raising them. So I'm trying to figure out a way, and then we seem to always manage to spend that money somehow. We never goes back the other way. So that's my thing, is just maybe changing our way of looking at it and looking at this reserve as the backup fund in case things don't go our way. And really giving it the benefit of the doubt that it is going to work like they said it is. And this is just a principle at mind of saying, hey, it's easy when you can take it from people. When you have to go earn it, it's difficult because you can't rely on it being there. So that's my position of trying to figure out if we need to offset it for next year, fine. Maybe it goes up by that. What would 100,000 be? A third of a levy point to make that difference back up to replenish the reserve fund or whatever it is. I just, you guys get where I'm trying to go with this, rather than taking it and then saying, oh, okay, next year, but then we forget about it and then the money gets spent and then we go do something else. And I'm trying to come up with creative ways to honestly look at the taxpayer in the eye and say, hey, you know, we're really due diligence here. We're really giving everything the benefit of the doubt. The other thing I just wanted to ask was, okay, so we have no outside agency increase. The U of M extension program was discounted out again. We're putting a lot of effort into Health and Human Services, and we're fully funding a RAP program. So the question I have, and again, I'm not picking on any of them, but what came to the conclusion that we have to fully fund the RAP program and the Health and Human Services positions, but we left out all the other eight? I mean, that's a big number, 150,000 for one program. I mean, that covers a lot of things for a lot of people. And then we look at the cost of the Health and Human Service Department too, which covers a lot of costs for a lot of other, you know, potential agencies that are out there. I'm not picking on any of them. I'm just asking, how did we come to the conclusion that with where everything's at in the county, that RAP program is the one that that's what we were gonna run with?
I think Ms. Holte wanted to address your prior point, if that's okay. And then Commissioner Meyer. And then I'm gonna probably jump in at some point. I can't wait till the very end.
I got a couple more points. too.
Actually,
That's the job, sitting in that chair.
All right.
Mhm.
Okay, so what I,
Well, Commissioner Meyer, I asked a valid question. How did we get to the RAP? How did we decide that the RAP program is what was going to be in the budget and the Health and Human Services, but the U of M or any of the other agencies were out? It's a valid question. I'm just trying to figure out how we got to that point. I know I missed one meeting, so I might have missed it in the meeting.
We had 2 or 3 study sessions and that sort of thing, working sessions, I think we call them. And, you know, in those meetings, nobody gave us specific direction. There were no votes. But up until this point, nobody's really said, you know, I mean, we had an outside agency for the first time come in and ask for some money, 175,000. And we read the room and said, okay, nobody wants that, so we took it out. It's not here anymore. But nobody up to this point has said, get rid of RAP. And every single time I point it out and I say, it's in here, it's in here, it's in here. It's been in here since August. when I
We're
talk,
saying It's not too late. We were.
no.
So
And
can I give?
motions can be made at any time.
Can I give a
in
short answer
December.
maybe?
So,
Is
so
that-
basically it was just, nobody said no to it. I'm just generally figuring out how these
And I
got
think that generally because
positioned.
it's an outside agency, it was lumped in with all the others where it was frozen. I think that's why as well, because it was an outside agency. But Commissioner Meyer has suggested to add, is it 13,860, I think is the number for Soil and Water Conservation District, is we could also as a board ask to add the extension position in as well. That would mean, I don't know what that
I
is.
don't know if we need to add, can we replace? Because it seems like we've got several heavily funded programs, fully funded programs, and we're asking everybody else to do nothing. So is there a wage that we can look at? I don't know what it takes to fund the RAP program. I don't know what it takes,
To
is
answer
there?
your question, I think it's because it was outside agency. That's why I got frozen. I think that's. what-
Yeah. But my question is can we look at, still partially funding a RAP program, partially funding the Health and Human Services, and also look at the U of M and potentially an SWCD increase for the same amount without having to increase taxes again? And then that's why I was looking at some other potential projects. Can we take these out? Do they need to be done now? Just ways to reallocate it without raising the levy. We created a very good situation. We sold a tax plan to the constituents, and here we are. Let's raise it again, or just fill the void back
I
up.
think it's important that we be very careful about what we say there, because I think, is it fair to say that we're going to reduce the levy as much as we can? Because we can't unfortunately start collecting in January 1st, but I'm right there with you. I was by myself and with you and with Commissioner Ward, looking people in the eyes and saying, if we pass this, we will reduce the levy. So we are reducing the levy as much as we can. It has to be prorated for a little bit.
Not really, because we don't collect property taxes, which makes up the levy till June, and
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So
so timing is.
Timing
Ms.
is
Holte
part
go,
of
Ms.
this.
Meyer, and then.
I'm going to pass right now.
So I think it's important to say, not only did we reduce the levy several more points below the 9%, we also had staff cut $1 million out of the programs. I passed out two things. One of these, Micah has already said what, based on our preliminary levy of 9%, for 2025, there are 3 counties that have a lower levy per capita than Winona County. We are not overtaxing our constituents. Second thing is, this is from the Minnesota Department of Corrections, but I was really trying to get a handle on the RAP Plus. So it isn't 100% analogous to RAP Plus, because this is really just about treatment services, and RAP is more than that. But there is, for every dollar that you spend, the public saves $7 because of reduced recidivism. And when we got the statistics from the RAP program, and we looked at them again in the opioid settlement meeting the other day, it's much higher than 23%, which was the number that came out of this study. I think something like 12 of the 91 people who graduated from that program reoffended. The rest of them did not. If you consider the healthcare costs, then it's a $12 return for every dollar that's invested. And this is for giving treatment for folks. So why is the RAP Plus so important? Because it's cost effective. Because it isn't just the right thing to do. I don't think any of us want folks to sit in jail if they have substance abuse or mental health issues. It also keeps them from reoffending and ending back up in jail. And that saves us a lot of money. So even though the RAP Plus program is not a mandatory program, in the end, it's not just the right thing to do, it's saving the county money.
I also feel like we should keep the RAP program. I think we should keep the human services recommendations, and thank you for going through the staff with it. I support the proposal to increase just 2 outside agencies, Soil and Water Conservation District, and adding the 4-H position. The 4-H position, I don't know what that equates to in terms of a percentage. It's 0.3, I don't know, 0.2. It's $50,000. Is that correct?
The 2, I think, are 0.26.
Maureen can get creative there
Yep.
with
So-
all this other money that's
So speaking
coming
for
in.
myself only, as long as we have reduced the levy as much as we can, because of there's some things that we didn't foresee. The Huff Street issue that's a full percentage point. That's something that we didn't know about in September, right? That's something new. And we can't be careful what we say there, et cetera, right? But I support the budget as is, speaking for myself only, and the addition of soil and water conservation and the addition of the 4-H position, which is another 0.26. So that I think would bump us to 5.4 something, et cetera. So that's speaking for myself, et cetera.
It would,
5.46.
there was already crap in there, sorry.
But we don't.
It's close.
It's close enough, et cetera. So, and that includes the reduction as much as we can from the levy because it has to be somewhat prorated. Commissioner Ward.
Well, I definitely support the extension 4-H. And we've talked about this in many ways. You know, you can throw out all these, well, if you spend this money on substance abuse, and if you spend money on ACEs, but childhood abuse. But where's the study that says that if you do good things to youth at the very get-go, that they reduce pressures on society for the rest of their lives? We don't have that study in our hand. And I've talked about this, is that the university is earlier, and I haven't confirmed it lately, they are concerned about providing curriculum for mental health for kids. Their staff is being trained in that ongoing. Now, about the opioid, we thought opioid and cannabis money, maybe some of that could be. And the nice thing about the extension is it's a contract. So, and it's a 2-year commitment, but if it's not working out or something changes, then we can change it. They're not our employee. They are a contracted employee. And I've always been the public health model, prevention, whereas, the human services is reactionary. It's something happened, now we got to fix it. Whereas the public health is, let's, give them a good experience to start with. I would like to go, though, on the, you're worried about collecting the sales tax and reducing the budget and everything, but we don't collect property taxes until May and.
May 15th.
Yeah, May is the first collection, and then households are November, and, no, wait, households are October, and farms are November.
Right, but
So, that's a staggered
No,
collection
but if-
anyway.
It isn't when it's collected, it's if it's collected at all.
Oh, it'll be collected.
If it doesn't
We
start
have
till-
confidence in the state of Minnesota to collect our tax.
If it doesn't,
Since it's 90 days, at least 90 days.
Yeah, to get,
Date that we
At
get things
least,
to
I
them.
know, and that's wrong, because
Whether right or wrong. it's-
merchants have to send it in at the end of each month.
it isn't just that we will get it late, we won't get it at all.
Yeah, we will, we will. We will get it.
There's difference. Because
We have the agency, and have we gotten the reports? I remember anything that is a 501(c), I think they also have to submit a report. I'm not asking for more work, but I think I thought by law, they had to report to the state. Their 501(c), they have to break down and give a report. Have we gotten any information from any of these outside agencies in regards to what they did with our money and the
So
results?
I did send the email to you, Commissioner Ward. I'll resend it.
Well, a few did, but not everybody, right?
Right, we don't have it for everyone.
Right. So I guess if we send out an email to them and they don't respond with this information, I'm saying then we should maybe reduce what we give them, because that's their obligation. They want philanthropic tax dollars from me and this board, then they should be obligated to tell us what they've done. One question came up, Project Fine is $45,000. Now, is that the contract for interpretive services? Okay, so that is a contract. But again, these other people should be providing, what they did or didn't do. If you do need the Fair Board, they just recently had their annual meeting, and they've got some information if anybody wants to see that. But I know some of these have not provided us anything, and I think that's irresponsible on their part, and it's irresponsible on our part if we don't ask them for it and know what they're doing.
Line item 8, the 240,000 for maintenance of one-time costs. Now, that's a levy point.
Yep.
For the most part.
A levy is $247,000.
If some sort of conclusive answer gets between now and then, arguably, we could take the levy down another point.
Agreed.
Yep. And
So currently with the motion, or current, not the motion, but where does it sit if we just follow this? Reiterate this again, I'm getting confused. Where it sits today, if we do exactly what's put together, where is our levy set at?
5.1
This is 5.1
with, yes,
with all the increases, with
Yes.
everything on here.
1.4.
5.1,
Without soil and water.
which is another, what,
2.26.
Yeah.
The 376.
You know, what happened to three, that's what I thought, three something.
What's the 376 on?
Yeah.
On
The
page
page.
That's the
175.
levy. So on 175 on the bottom. So if you go across the bottom there,
Yeah,
it says current levy amount 3.76.
that's, yeah,
Right.
3.76.
But you're
Right, but if
talking
you go to the
5.
next column, it
Yeah.
says we currently
Oh,
have a
with-
deficit of 342,000 in the budget right now,
Right.
the
But we've-
draft budget.
But we've got 5 million higher in our reserves than our policy says, right? We got 8.2, or that was 2023. So what's the reserves today?
What is the total reserve today then?
at the end, well, I'm forecasting in December of 20,270,000.
Oh, but that's, unrestricted. Yeah, you've
Yep.
got it there. So again, why would we have that much more in reserves than our policy?
To cover, well, I wrote down a few things here.
But going with Commissioner Elsing's thought, then we're just, are we really trying to hold ourselves accountable? No, not in my opinion. If we have that much reserve and our policy says we should have 12.5 million?
That's what I was looking at.
Or
is
that's the
just
2023 figure?
What I was just
Or is
alluding
it the
to is
14?
342,000 of a $20 million operating reserve is a drop in the bucket, but yet we're going out and asking for another 1.3 points on a levy, and we've got 20 million sitting there. You know, to me, yeah, I could see if we had some major things, but I mean, we're approaching, you know, I understand the 312's policy, but again, we're trying to get this thing so it's down. So I mean, can we absorb the 342,000 into the 20 million and still be just fine on an operating budget? It's a very small portion of that, but it is a 1 point some points on the levy, which in turn, you know, and then we look at the 240,000, which could pull another point off. I mean, theoretically, we could get this thing close to zero, still fund what we want to fund here, regardless of why some of the things are and some of the things aren't, and possibly work this U of M deal in or something like that, and still be very close to zero if we could make this thing.
You lost me there in terms of
I
getting
mean,
to zero.
Just saying,
I'm
we
hearing him. Let me explain it back.
Yeah.
You know, fund balance reserve, I think, should be used for one-time purposes or
Yep.
to cover deficits that are unexpected. A one-time cost next year could be these one-time things related to a real estate purchase. I mean, so that is something we could leave out of the budget. And
Correct.
if we get hit with it, okay,
There.
we'll spend the
That is
money.
my point. That's my whole point to this. Perfect,
And-
you got it.
I mean, that,
$2 million roof, that's a one-time, you're putting the $2 million roof.
We'll bond for
in there.
that.
Yeah, but we didn't approve bonding. I
Not
mean,
yet.
bonding comes with a cost.
Look, I want to stay, can I just stay on, let's stay on subject.
And those are capital, I mean, you could say that about all capital, right? I mean, and then I would say, you know, you don't want to start, you know, using reserves to pay for your capital, because capital, even though it's one time, it's not. I mean, things break, things fall apart, things need to be replaced.
Right.
That's different than having to load up a moving truck and relocating facilities and, you know, paying off a lease early and things like that. That's different. That's
So I just
Non-recurring.
You're alluding exactly what I'm talking about, rather than automatically putting it in there and say, hey, we're going to take it, because it get dissolved in and we don't see it. To me, the point of that unrestricted operating fund is, if this were to happen, now we'll go take it out of there, versus budgeting it and saying, hey, we're going to take it regardless and then give it back. It gets lost in, I think, a lot of that, and it's more palatable to make it back up a little bit than it is to take it, because it's the $400 hammer theory,
And to make
right?
make sure I'm understanding
Yeah.
correctly, that if we take that would reduce it by a full percentage point, right?
Yes.
So I'm actually supportive of that. So
Yeah.
let's reduce it by 1%.
And if the odd chance that happens, that's what we have that operating fund for.
Right.
Yes, that's what I've been trying to allude to the whole time. Are these things absolutely, it's even the $100,000, $300,000 impact. If we put faith in our staff that says, hey, that's what's going to happen, let's err to that side. And if it doesn't happen, that's why we have this large reserve here.
And I'd rather do that than aim too high on a revenue related to the health and human services and then have to explain to you why we missed the target next year.
Right.
I'd
But I
rather do
think if
that
we're-
sort
if
of
we
thing.
Operate under that procedure, then we know, hey, it's a lot more palatable when we do miss the target because we're operating under that procedure, you know?
Commissioner Meyer.
Yep, so for the 10 years before I took office, and then for a few years after, we had this idea that we should live only by the budget and only by the levy. So we had sometimes negative and sometimes zero and sometimes only one. But this is not recognizing that there is inflation and that we issue bonds and we get a great rating because we have a good bond rating. And we think about times like 2007 when the flood happened and there was a real need. So I think riding your reserve as close as you can do it is a dangerous game and one that I think means there are consequences in terms of fluctuations in the levy for things that need to get done. So it is my opinion that nickel and diming and trying to take stuff out of the fund, out of the reserves this year is not that great an idea. This is already a really low levy. And our taxes are already pretty dang low. And if we have staff that is working their tail off to figure out how they can do more with less, and they've done that, then I don't think that we should punish them by demanding that they do more.
And I will add too that we've got another month to go.
Yeah.
Commissioner Elsing.
I don't think we're punishing anybody. We're looking for other ideas. And that's, as a board, that's our job. Our job is to assume that nobody here knows it all. And so we're all putting our input in and coming up with different ideas. So I don't think, I guess my intentions is not to punish anybody or look down upon any decisions, but it's to collectively take the knowledge of everybody and move it forward. Liking to think that owning a business, I play with numbers like this all the time. So that's all we're trying to do. So I have no intentions of punishing you. I'm sorry if I come across that way. I'm very thankful for the work and I really appreciate the opportunity to be part of it and give my business sense to it and how I would see it. We are not taking out of the fund. The only way we would take out of the fund is that were to happen. And if we have another 2007 event, a 1 in 100 year event, do we manage the county for a 1 in 100 year event? Or do we manage the county for a 1 in 5 or 2 or 10 or whatever that is? I also want to allude to the whole tax situation. Growth in government comes from the concept of comparing ourselves to others because it works like this. Well, we got 3 people that are better than us, so we can spend more. And then these 3 people say, well, they got 3 people better than us. And then it's a ladder effect. It continues to go up with that mindset. That is exactly how you grow a tax base. Because it's always comparing, well, there's somebody doing it, we're only here, so we have room to go up. And then the next people compare it to you and then to you and to you. It is a comparison, but it's not a fair comparison because it creates, and this is, you could just go, this is textbook, it creates the ladder effect. Because there's always somebody underneath you you're comparing to. So you manage you for you. You can look at other places, but equally, I can say, why can't we be at the bottom? Why can't we be the best and frugal? And rather than a negative thing like, hey, we can grow, we can ask for more taxes, I look at it and say, why can't we be number 1? To me, that's like the stamp that says, our people are doing the absolute best job. To me, that's how you win. That's a proof that our people are doing it. So I have a different take on it. I call it wrong, but I look at it the opposite way. I would encourage on this to take a look at the opportunity to maybe relook at it Chuck, and say, hey, do we need these things in the levy? And for the very small percentage, if it were to happen, we could pull it out of the operating reserve, and knowing that we might have to make that back up a little bit year. Then we don't automatically just take it out of the taxpayers' money and say, hey, you may or may not get this back next year. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? And then I think as long as we note that and we operate somewhat under that procedure, it's also a lot more palatable when we bring it up next year and say, hey, remember those couple of things we talked about? We pulled them out. They did come out of the reserve. We got to make that difference back up. Then it automatically becomes a line item on the new budget that says, hey, we rolled the dice a little bit. Hey, taxpayer, you got to make the difference. That is a lot more palatable than just taking it.
I like to propose that Commissioner Meyer, and then maybe we could go around and just, in the interest of time, is maybe say where we're, it's Commissioner Meyer, and then go around again and say where folks are at. Because we're not, this is an update. We're not making decisions, right? But just say where folks are at.
Giving direction.
Yeah, 100%.
And select options, because ultimately we have to make a decision. And none of us will get everything that we want. We're gonna, there's some give and take, et cetera. But yeah, maybe just do a check-in just so staff knows, just so they know what to put on the next update. Just so and to give them as much advance notice as possible to ask them what we're asking them to look for. Like the idea of taking that off of reserves for a possible whatever, that's a good idea. Commissioner Meyer?
Yeah. My goal would be for the taxpayers to not have roller coaster levies, that we plan ahead, and that if we know that we actually need a higher base funding so that we can afford to buy lighting controls so that the lights in the hall don't go off when no one's out there moving, and to buy our plow trucks and to replace the police cars, that we plan ahead, even if that means sometimes we build up a reserve. And the second thing is that I think that the county is not that different from me buying cabinets for my kitchen. I do not get the cheapest cabinets that they have from Menards, nor do I get the most expensive ones. I try to get something that is quality and that is in the mid-range. A lot of people in this county rely on us for services.
No.
I'm sorry. I was speaking.
Commissioner Park, go ahead, finish up.
Yeah.
Finish up.
Your
Yeah,
cabinet
no, yeah,
shopping.
it sounds to me like you were having a conversation
Your
between the two of
cabinet
you.
shopping. I
No,
got
that's
your
okay.
point.
We're all good. We're all good, Commissioner Park, please finish.
So a lot of people rely on us for services. People who need help, people who need child protective services, people who end up in jail, people who get arrested, people who want to build homes, people who need permits to expand some aspect of their business. I want us to be able to provide them quality service and not crappy service because we're trying to keep their taxes as low as possible. I think in the long run, that doesn't help us to improve the economy. It doesn't help us to attract people to move to Winona, and it doesn't get folks to stay here. So it seems to me that nickel and diming to have the lowest possible levy really says something about quality of life in Winona, and that's what I would like to support.
Okay, is it okay for folks to go around and just say, and based on looking at page 175, that's probably the best summary, is that fair? Is what folks are currently thinking and to give staff direction in terms of what we might want to see from them.
I'll start.
Commissioner Olson.
I would support the 5.14, knowing that we'd take the 200 out of there, we would know more by the next meeting potentially, or, correct?
Yes.
That's fair?
Yes. So soil and water and 4-H,
I'm at the 5.4 recommended.
5.14.
5.14,
Okay.
5.14, I'm sorry.
So no soil and water and no 4-H. Okay.
I just know how that vote will go at the end, or I think I know, and I'm not gonna go anywhere more than that.
I'll go next. And then somebody else can volunteer or we can pass, is looking at page 175. Assuming that we have lowered the levy as much as we can based on the sales tax referendum. It currently is at 5.14. Speaking for myself only, I would like to see the $13,860 addition to soil and water. And I would also like to see the addition of 4-H. speaking for myself only, I would also like to reduce it by 1 percentage point by doing what Commissioner Elsie had suggested in terms of a possible real estate, that the real estate, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Elsie adds a point to the levy, right?
Yep.
So that it adds a little bit, 0.2, whatever, and then it reduces 1 point, whatever that ends up at. So that's speaking for myself only and leaving the other items as is. So the only outside agencies that get funding increases would be soil and water and 4-H. So that puts it in the 4 I've lost track, 4.4 range, et cetera. I don't know, 4 point. And there's still a month left for them to work their magic possibly with no promises. Commissioner Elstein or Meyer or Ward, do you want to give the staff a sense of where you're at?
Well, I don't want to build a savings account for my taxpayers. So I think we really need to adhere closely to our policy of 3/12 of operating expenditures. And I think we need to get it down much closer to what that should be. I definitely support the 4-H position because I have been very tentative conversations that Ms. Holter thinks there may be other resources. But if we need to, I would not blacktop the Utica shop. There's 40,000 right there. And I'm hoping that we could maybe the cameras and locks the building, take another 10 out. I mean, I think there's places we could take money out without raising the levy to accomplish that particular goal. Because 4-H, I think it will, is it measurable? And are there measurements? Yes, we have numbers of children that they've reached. Long-term, it's just like all these other things. You think it'll help society, and I truly believe that. Again, but so I'm not set on a dollar amount or a percentage of levy because I think there's still some things that can be flushed out. I'm not real crazy about bonding for the courthouse roof, 2 million bonding. I don't know what that payment would be and what the interest would be on a roof bonding. Don't have enough information there. And I want reports from these outside agencies, what they're doing with our money, because I think there's money there. If they're not reporting to us what they're doing, then I think we have every right to change the amount that they're getting. Because that's 727,000. That's what almost 3% of levy. And that's that philanthropic giving, which I have problems with.
Commissioner Elstein or Commissioner Meyer?
Yeah, again, thank you for all your guys' work. It's good. I'm a numbers guy, so this is phenomenal. I just want to state again, I'm sorry if we feel as though it's burdensome, but I think this is what we got elected to do. I agree. I think there needs to be a lot of accountability in some of these things that we see come in, some of the I guess, categories that Commissioner Ward is talking about, and making sure that we're getting our money's worth out of those so that information is good. One of the questions I had was, if we were to bond for the roof on the courthouse, is that factored into the budget?
Debt services, yes.
The debt service is in there. Okay, just making sure. And at what percentage? Is it 375?
Yeah.
Somewhere in that range?
Yes.
Yeah. And there's no money down. It'd be 100% bond?
Yep.
Okay. I guess, obviously the number I have is negative 10%, right? Let's go for it. But the reality of it is that I made a promise that the levy would be at a minimum, whatever it would be reduced to by if that tax, the referendum passed. So to me, that's 3.76. I think there's room in here. I completely understand where Commissioner Meyer is coming from by not having a rubber band effect. The rubber band effect is why we have an operating reserve, is to make sure that we can balance that out over a period of time. And there's an assumption made that we're not going to see major catastrophes 3 years in a row. So the reality of it is that I don't know anybody that wants their money held by government not making any interest on it. They would rather have their own money. So I think we do have to look at that as being very frugal and penny pinching and saying, hey, constituents, our job is to manage this as well. I pick up pennies, so maybe I'm the weird one. So I think if we can get creative, and I think you're the guy to do it, I think Maureen can do it. You guys got us this far, and that's impressive. It really genuinely is. This is very impressive. I think there's enough here that we can get the 4-H, we can get the SWCD a little kick and still stay at a maximum of 376. Would I like to see it at a 0? Sure. Maybe the Health and Human Services doesn't get all 4. Maybe they get 1 or 2 or 3. You know, maybe the RAP program gets, 3/4 funded, 50% funded. Let's see how it works. If it needs more, we'll do it next year. I don't understand all the ins and outs. I know you guys do. But dig deep, find a couple things. And I think for the people that did not vote for this tax levy, and I do not mean this in a conceited way, what I kind of want to tell them is, I told you so. Like, hey, see, we could do it. We made this work. We did it, right? That is how we build faith in our government, not having a couple $100,000 in a program, in a slush fund in case it hits the fan. So I believe you guys can do it. Thank you for all your hard work. I mean, there's enough in here that if I was sitting there, we could probably get it to 0. And, is it kicking the can down the road? Maybe on a couple things? Sure. But I think we can look at that kicking the can down the road too as being very efficient and maximizing everything, just like we would in our houses or business. So thank you for all your hard work. I don't have a set number, but I don't think we can go over 376. So, and I would like to fund those 2 things.
Commissioner Ward, can I ask you don't need to answer, about Soil and Water Conservation District? Their request was 13,860.
And there's so much money with the water, all the water
I'm trying
programs.
to give them something to add in or not.
Will it make or break them? No.
No.
Will it make or break us? No. I guess, if they can find it somewhere else,
So you don't want to add, or do you do? You're willing to consider it?
I would consider it.
Okay. Commissioner Meyer.
I completely support the 5.14 plus the addition for soil, water, and the extension educator.
Is that enough staff for Chuck?
Yes.
For Mr. Elliott and Ms. Pulte? Absolutely.
Just gonna try and get it back.
Maybe they failed.
Those lights.
Is there anything else, Mr. Elliott, you would like from us at this time?
No.
So the Truth and Taxation meeting is the information is going to be based on a 9% levy
No.
increase.
No,
No.
it'd be,
No.
3.76, unless.
Okay, awesome, perfect. That's a much better answer. I love that answer. Awesome.
Taxes went up over 9%.
proposed.
People are gonna see on their tax.
That's what I was
Yep.
asking. What they're getting.
On the preliminary,
I've gotten other counties, but I haven't got,
We didn't have the sales tax
If they're not in
information
your
yet.
mailbox today, they should.
doesn't went out before.
oh,
That's what I,
Yeah.
other counties.
that's what I was asking about. What people are getting in their mail for the proposed levy with my name on it is going to be 9.
So that's based on,
Yeah, heavy with your name on it.
Sorry.
Heavy with his name.
Yeah, put his name on it. No, I think they put Chelsea's name, or is it neutral anymore? They used to put the board chair and you'd get
I
calls.
think it's both, isn't it?
No.
Put my name on.
They took
So I
your
signed up
names
for it.
Yeah,
Oh, all right.
yeah, good, good. Well, they used
My
to call,
name and my phone number.
they would call us and we didn't have the data or the facts or anything. So thank you.
All right, does that address that item?
Yep.
So that then takes us to,
Where are we?
do we need to take a break? Are we okay?
I'm good.
I think the last couple items to be relatively quick,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
mine were just real quick question.
Yep, 10-6.
So what became item 10.6 was formerly 9.1, which was
Yeah, yeah.
approves modified organizational structural chart.
Right, and I have to, and I apologize, I didn't ask Ms. Holte, so we're dropping the assistant county administrator and just looking to hire a top HR position. Is that have we had trouble recruiting? Or is it just a too cumbersome a position that you don't feel that you could fill? Or what's the rationale there? You're doing a great job, you don't need a helper. Thank you.
Thank you, I think. We are struggling to find the right person.
Uh-huh.
It's a big job and it is difficult to find the combination of the assistant role with the human resource director.
And it will save me money, because it would just the human resource be posted at a lower
It will,
Okay.
that wage grid will be forthcoming. I wanted to make sure there was agreement to even go this direction before I went through the work of putting wage grid forward.
But at some point, you will probably be adding that position back in, assistant? Or,
I guess we'll
wait and see, you
take
don't
some
have
time
plans?
here and evaluate how things go. And,
Okay, all right,
you know,
see?
it is
Cost
going to be a
savings?
change for the board as well.
A cost savings right there.
Because you
Thank
really
you.
stuck with me. just
That's
so you
right.
know.
That's right.
I'm it.
Okay, thank you. That was my
Remember that whole
Thank you.
meeting will continue. so
Yeah,
we're not-
right, right.
other duties as assigned.
We'll talk about that.
the interest of time.
So
What I'm-
I will move to approve the modified organizational structure chart.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Ward, seconded by Commissioner Elsting. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. I'm sorry.
I have
Motion carries 4-1. Motion carries 4-1. Item 10.7 was formerly 9.3, approved state of Minnesota fiscal year agreement to provide funding for treatment court.
And I think I pulled that one.
Mhm.
Just that, now that we had all this budget discussion, I understand the state contract and everything, but our local levy amount going into this is increased significantly. And I guess I would ask to look at that because 2022, it was only like 11,900 and something local levy, and now we're up to 58,695. And I'm not sure why that's increased that much over just, a couple of years. And so when you're doing the budget work, I guess I would like an explanation of, why, what's driving the increase there?
Mr. Chair, could I address that?
Certainly.
There's half my 4-H coordinator.
Well, I can help give you back your former coordinator, and as a former 4-H'er, I am
You would
very
support
supportive
that.
of that.
Of course you would. Thank you.
And as a 4-H, former 4-H'er, I'm very supportive of helping people at all stages of their life. I just have to say that, sir.
Scott?
We're looking for private donations.
What?
We're looking for private donations.
I donate to 4-H and a lot of other things. No, 4-H is an incredible program. But I just wanted to mention that we had a treatment court policy meeting today. First of all, I want to note in this 9.3, if you look there, the funding from the state has actually increased significantly. It used to be about 84,000. It's now 105,424. And your treatment court coordinator, Karen Heider, has worked hard to also get about $30,000 in grants, which I have to talk to Mr. Elliott about. About 10,000 each in different kinds of programs that would pay for testing, that would pay for some other things in our program. So by my count, we've reduced the exposure to the county from that $58,000 to $16,000 a year.
Oh,
So,
good. All right.
okay,
Thank
so
you.
Like
Well,
we said,
I
we're
had-
still in
we
progress.
are working
I
at
had to
this.
ask. I caught
So-
it, so I had to ask. Thank you.
Mhm.
Is there a
No.
motion?
I'll move to approve what used to be 9.3, now 10.7, approved state treatment state of Minnesota fiscal year 2024, 2025, agreement to provide funding for treatment court.
Motion by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Olson. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Last item is 10.8, which was formerly 9.5, approved the 2025 CETA Economic Development Professional Services Contract. I believe, Mr. Commissioner Elsing, you pulled that one.
Well, this is just more for short discussion or just a couple questions, but with the economic development, we have 1.1 million in there. Is that correct?
A little bit more, I think, but
Revolving
Who
loan.
can
1-1.
answer?
Hello, that's for last, right?
Yeah, stuck around.
Current balance is about 1 million.
1 million, okay. Are we having a hard time finding a home for that? I mean, Dusty's great. Dusty's helped me personally. I call her the hound dog. She's on it, right?
Yeah,
But are we having an issue?
there's a number of factors that are leading to it being hard to get it out in the community and cycling around through local businesses. One is interest rates over the last few years. Another is staffing, honestly.
The interest rates, what we have, are we obligated to charge a certain rate?
We set it, so the EDA sets it. For the longest time, it was 1% below prime. with a bottom of, but a lot of times that was, prime was at like 3-4%. And so we were just below that. And then as it went up, I mean, our 1% below prime was at, I mean, we've got a loan out for 7.5%. So all of a sudden that doesn't look so good anymore. For a number of reasons, but we changed that recently this summer. Now we're 3% below prime, with a floor of 3.5%.
Do we have that in an interest-bearing account?
That's well, I mean, we collect interest from the loans. Where that goes in finance, and I'm not sure. You'll have to ask where those loans are sitting.
The question I have is, I mean, if there's $1 million in there, and it seems to kind of be the thing, right? Currently, I mean, I could throw $1 million at the wall and get 5% pretty easily. Just pick up the phone and call 10 different people I work with. So that's $50,000. That covers anything we're paying into CETA just alone, just by putting that money into an FDIC insured T-bills, pick something, right? So the question I would have is, can we, if that's in a segregated account or if it's just in the,
Separate, it's not in the
Yeah.
county's coffers, if
Right.
that's what you're asking.
that's what I'm asking. Is there a way we could put that into some sort of interest-bearing account that we're making interest on the money, plus we're making interest just as a way as a continuance? And then also, is there a way that we could open the parameters up a little bit, especially as we're getting into the high interest rates, especially as we're seeing businesses leave municipalities, right? I mean, the loan you're talking about is a business that physically left a municipality, just because of the rising costs and the other things, the increase in taxes. I mean, everything that's being hit businesses is very difficult. So I'm wondering, is there a way that we could maybe just look at that and say, can we adjust parameters? Does it take a lot to do it? I don't know what it is, but it's why I pulled it.
Yeah, and there's a number of things we can look into. I know we've had questions like this over the years, over and over again. I've only been really working closely with the EDA for the last 2 years since Kay left. And I know that just before Kay had left, we were looking at questions like that. And something to keep in mind is that the revolving loan fund money came from deed as part of the 2007 flood, and recycled around through for flood recovery for small businesses.
Yeah.
And then after that, a certain amount of that was kept as like a block grant from deed from the state, to be used for revolving loan funds. It's one of the things that can be used for. There are other things, but it's all to be used for small business support and financing. But there are a few things there that we could look at, and I'd have to, go to our loan officer with deed and talk through some of those issues. I was looking for past conversations and information that I know that we received. I couldn't find anything, I have an idea of what some of the answers are, but I need to go back and verify and then, record that and have it in a place that can be referred to in the future. So there's a little bit of work there that needs to happen.
I think figuring out if there's a way, because it's not a fund that's easily replenishable, if we have that money, it's in a segregated account. Can we figure out, we did this with the SWCD. We put all our money, including when we were in charge of the One Water One Shed, that was $500,000. We stuck it in an interest-bearing account and found out that money we made now could be dispersed to other projects. We were being just that was one of my ideas, right? Or Wanda worked on that and she found those accounts. So I think with looking at those opportunities to replenish those accounts would be phenomenal, both on the in and the outside. And then that flexible, the income, the fund itself is generating income. The unique thing is two different ways to keep that fund going. And then maybe opening up the parameters a little bit and giving, owning a bunch of rentals. I've had multiple people come to me and say, boy, I sure would love to put a little restaurant in. I sure would put, I had a couple people want to put a little liquor store in. Several people wanted to dual purpose a food truck and a little restaurant, but it was just, it all boiled down to, I've never had a loan, or I've never had this. I can't even go to the bank. And if I go to the county or whatever, they're not gonna,
We're pretty flexible on what we'll loan to. We're more flexible than the municipalities. There's, Lewiston, Goodview, St. Charles, and the city of Winona all have revolving loan funds of their own.
Yeah.
We cover more than any of those municipalities have. So we actually loan within those municipalities because, for example, they don't cover retail. And they're focused more on
Industrial.
in manufacturing, different types of business. But we look at retail as well. The caveat is that we will take on a little bit more risk as a gap lender, but we are a gap lender, so there needs to be a primary lender who's willing to back at least, 50% of the project. And there has to be, so making up the rest of that. And we do have limits on what we will go to as well. So, and we've gone past those
We
too.
have bankers on that committee, so.
We do, and
they
that's a
should
key
know.
to
should
our
know.
success.
Because we're asking for more flexibility, as much flexibility as.
We can look into
And
it for
then
sure.
as much opportunity as we can to replenish the fund.
Another thing I just want to give a plug for the contract, since that's what's on the agenda tonight and Dusty's work, is that I do think that we will get a lot more of that money out the door in the next year or two coming years. I think our work that we're doing and the engagement we're doing with the banks through her work and her being on staff is going to pay off. So.
So takeaway is you're going to look, Commissioner, I think Olson and I were present, and Commissioner Ward, when the flood happened and the EDA had just been created. There was actually a place for those flood funds to go. My memory is that DEED didn't allow us to, didn't want us in the investment banking business, but maybe that's wrong. It's worth checking in. Yeah, exactly. It can't hurt to.
There are many strings attached to that money. So it's pretty,
Several
you know,
steps.
Yeah, but it's worth.
it's pretty
checking
focused, but
But all the deed people have changed, so the philosophy
We'll
changes
ask
when the
again.
people change.
But even a money market, FDIC money market through a bank, I mean, yeah, just anything like that, even making 2-3% on $1 million, that's 20-30,000.
Yep. Exactly.
Ms. Pulte, I think that's.
So, I missed part of the conversation, but in a nutshell, it sounds like the direction is the same where auditor, treasurer, Wilbright, Lou, and finance director Elliott and I will look into what options we have and we can communicate back.
It's
So
nothing
I think
pressing.
We're all on the same, what can we do differently and perhaps get more.
And possibly to save you four sometimes, if maybe ask Dusty to look into it and maybe save the four of you sometime. Maybe she could find that out versus four of you, et cetera. But yes,
Online, we'll figure it out.
thank you.
The answer is probably already there.
Yep, but we'll,
I just wanted to shed light on it.
yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
So then there we probably gonna entertain could we entertain a motion for?
So move.
Second.
Second, third.
Motion by Commissioner Elstein, seconded by Commissioner Ward to approve, I lost it, I'm sorry. What was item 9.5, which is now 10.8, to approve the 2025 CETA Economic Development Professional Services Contract. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 5-0. That takes us to communications. Commissioner Elstein.
Just a couple comments. First of all, happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and happy Veterans Day. Well, actually, we did the Veterans Day already. Couple things, Commissioner Ward and I were talking about here just a little bit ago. Applicants for boards, Board of Adjustment and Planning. We need to find some replacements. We had a few people step off those boards. Really, and really all our committees. So it's, whatever we can do to get people to get onto these boards, we need to. So please.
EDA as well, too. Yeah.
December 4th is 4 o'clock is the deadline. So yeah, that's coming up soon.
Yeah.
They can apply afterwards, but to get on the January meeting for, yep.
And I just wanted to bring note to, again, and I'm glad we discussed it earlier, I'm just going to bring note to reminding everybody about the change in for December for the meetings, in case somebody didn't have it in their phone. So those are the two things I had.
Thank you, Commissioner Ward.
Real quick at the One Water, One Shed plan, Monday in Preston, the trend is drink young water, not old water. The young water is actually showing a positive reduction in nitrates and things. I mean, it's a trend. Whereas the old water is still not trending up in a positive way. So you want to drink young water. So I don't know if we should start drinking surface water or what, but that's really young. But that was interesting. They're finally getting some statistical data from all this testing for, 20 plus years. And yeah, the committees, we need people in the committees and water. You talk about water. So here, we live in southeast Minnesota. The other day, I get a note, my electricity went off in the middle of the day, Wednesday, power's out. Grandkids are there, can't use the internet, But anyway, so we get a text from My Energy. They're one of our suppliers. They're gonna switch our power to another line because in the stream bank restoration project, which they made beautiful along the trout stream in New Hartford Valley, we have beavers. The beavers gnawed off a tree and dropped it on the power line. So they had to go fix so maybe we got a beaver problem in Winona County. Part of my story, the beavers took out the power.
Beaver terrorists, I think we should make
Beaver
make the
terrorists?
headline. There we go, Chris Roger. Even more tantalizing. Beaver terrorists. Yeah.
2 every year on the farm.
And the beaver.
Watch it. Ms. Sonneman.
I just wanted to announce that on December 5th, I won't be here because I will be installed as the Minnesota County Attorneys Association President for 2025. Steve will be covering for me that evening, which I told him it was in the morning, but it's the evening. Sorry, Steve.
The state association?
State Association and Commissioner
thing
Ward,
you
you
were
had
here.
mentioned, I think at the last meeting about we should talk to the state association. So
Yes.
you can talk to me
There we go.
anytime you want. So, but I also wanted to announce, speaking of budget, and I told this to Maureen already, I will not use levy funds for any of my duties as president for travel and, hotel. I'll use the county attorney's forfeiture funds. So there will be no property levy used for my time as president. So.
Congratulations. Thank you for doing that.
Go to the MCIT meeting because you rent space from us, I think.
We're always there. That's where we meet.
Oh, you pay
Yeah.
rent, good,
Yeah,
appreciate that,
okay.
thank you. Just money circulating.
Ms. Sonneman, anything else?
No, that was it.
I didn't want to say, also, like Commissioner Elstein said, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. So much to be grateful for. There are definitely political differences, but we live in an amazing country and hopefully we can come together after this election. And I also wanted to mention the December meetings. So I'll say it one more time. So December 5th is a Thursday, right? That's a 6 o'clock meeting. It'll also be the Truth and Taxation meeting. And then Friday, December 20th is a 9 o'clock AM morning meeting. This is for the press, for other staff it took me a while to get my head around it. With that, is it press?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Commissioner Olson, second by Commissioner Meyer to adjourn. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to the staff who was here so very long.
It was been.
12, 15-hour day.
It's always been here.
Well, it's official.
Not yet, because.
Nope.